Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto makes his way from his first day as a Genin part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. The large man that Naruto had labeled Erosen leaned over the large railing that separated the road from the drop down to the sheltered town. It was a common thing in the more wind-exposed places in the land of fire. Naruto wasn't tall enough to peer over it, so he had to do with a limited view for the coming lesson that he was about to receive. You know, it's probably healthy for you to learn how to relax a bit more, Naruto, the Erosen began. They had traveled far and trained a lot lately, but Naruto had only really appreciated the training, and then he'd gone out of his way to be a bit of a pest when they didn't. You need to learn how to take a moment and observe your situation. That ability will serve you well as a shinobi if you'll manage to use it. He then paused to let Naruto digest his words for a bit. Not to mention, to see how problematic it would be for the little Gaki to learn the meaning of the word patience. As the moment dragged on, Naruto frowned. The old man had made it a habit of not elaborating, but Naruto was already impatient and in no mood for games. Hey, Erosen. What do you mean? Jiraiya scowled as his apprentice did the exact opposite of what he had just told him to do. I mean that you must learn to have patience, and not just go rushing into any given situation. It wouldn't hurt you to try and think a little now and then either. It was a painfully slow task to teach someone like Naruto that to act first and think later didn't always work. Fun but slow. Jiraiya continued to stare over the railing as Naruto tried to dig out the meaning of Jiraiya's plainly spoken words. He wasn't stupid, but it took some work to get him to accept a new idea. After a few minutes, he decided that he would try to do what the old pervert had suggested. He turned his back to the railing and tried to relax. His mind, however, was nagging at how this would help him as a shinobi. Erosen. How can this help me as an awesome ninja? Jiraiya huffed. He didn't really want to give a long lecture, but with a student like Naruto you had to answer when asked. Well, who would you say is the most successful shinobi out of your class? Me? Jiraiya chuckled at the answer. Naruto had an ego the size of Konohagakure no Sato at times. No, not you. Who else can you think of? Naruto pouted. Is it Sakura? She's the apprentice of Bachan. Jiraiya shook his head. Naruto's face took on an expression that suggested pain. He was thinking. It is not Sasuke either, Jiraiya added after a little while. The boy's fixation on his former teammate was both a blessing and a curse in his training. It made him work harder, but it also narrowed the teaching methods that could be used. After a while, Naruto shook his head and huffed in defeat. I don't know, Jiraiya smiled. It is the Nara boy. Shikamaru? Naruto asked in disbelief. Yes. Is it because he's a chunin? Partly, but not exactly. Jiraiya was secretly getting his hopes up. Naruto was closing in on the point. Naruto paused, then after a while he seemed to realize something. I get it. I know why he's the most successful. Jiraiya smiled. It would seem that Naruto had learned a little bit about seeing underneath the underneath after all. It's because he's lazy, right? Well, maybe not. Naruto, how is being lazy the same as being successful? Jiraiya asked disappointedly. Naruto pouted at the question. Hey, you just said I needed to relax to be a good ninja. Naruto practically shouted. With a decisively firm voice, Jiraiya told him to calm down. It wouldn't do any good if he started shouting. With a sigh he tried again. Naruto, I told you to calm down so you could figure out why he is so successful. Think about how he fights, how he acts. Why is he the only one that became chunin? Naruto crossed his arms and looked at the sky. He fights slowly, he acts lazy and thinks everything is troublesome. After some thought he continued, and he lost his battle in the chunin exam. Naruto shook his head. The only logical thing he could come up with was that he was made chunin because he lost, and he knew that wasn't the answer the old pervert wanted. I don't know why he's the only one that made chunin. Jiraiya sighed. The mystery seemed to be a bit too much for Naruto. It's because he fights as a shinobi should fight, he told the boy with a knowing smile. Naruto tilted his head to the side. Nani? Should shinobi fight slowly? Now he was really confused. No, shinobi only fight slowly when they must, Jiraiya informed him. Shinobi often fight fast to conceal their techniques and to get the upper hand over their opponents using speed, but what makes a truly good shinobi is the ability to keep their own secrets, while at the same time puzzle out what their opponents are hiding. Jiraiya looked down at his student. He had his full attention now, and it was important for him to learn this early on. It had been a shock to see how neglected Naruto had been with the basics of the shinobi ways. That's why he focused a lot of their training on the more elementary things a shinobi needed to know. In his battle with the Suna girl, he controlled the fight by just dragging it out. Jiraiya continued, hoping that an example would drive the point home. By using the information he gathered from her attacks, he controlled her battle options by distracting her with pieces of information that he selected. Nearly everything he did was to distract her from his true plan. Nani? Although he used the whole fight to figure out how to capture her. Naruto was truly baffled. He knew Shikamaru was smart, the mission to rescue Sasuke had shown him that much, but this was amazing. No, he was calm and centered. I know that you have your moments, Naruto perked up at that, but compared to the Nara boy, you're about as insightful as a dango stick. Hey, now, Jiraiya continued, ignoring the outburst, if you took your time and actually tried to think ahead, you may just become an effective shinobi after all. After that, Jiraiya stayed silent and peered down towards the town. Naruto did as his teacher had said and took his time to think about what he had just learned. It was true that he had won several victories by tricking his opponents. He had in fact always managed to surprise his opponents when he won fights. He tricked Kiba several times before the fight got serious. He had let Kabuto stab his hand to keep him from moving. It was the trick at the end of his Chunin exam fight that enabled him to get inside Niji's guard. Maybe the old pervert had a point after all. With that in mind, Naruto promised that he would try and look underneath a little more in the future. Even so, standing still and relax was not much fun when you had nothing to look at. The Arrow Sennin had a view at least, looking over the railing. It would seem that he was looking at something interesting, if one were to judge by his stare. With little difficulty Naruto jumped up on the railing, only to see that his teacher had a clear view into a bathhouse that was definitively placed on the wrong location. This was probably why he wanted Naruto to stand still and think. This was why he got mad when Naruto raised his voice. It was all an excuse. He really should have been able to see underneath this situation. The women at the bath were suddenly alerted by the shouting of a boy and the frantic hushing of an older male. The scene was disrupted by a truly dreadful noise. Naruto slammed his hand onto the infernal device that had taken up residence on the table by his bed. Slowly he got up in a sitting position, trying, with a limited success, to get a grasp on reality. It was always hard to start the day, especially when you had something to do, like ninja registration. It had been a few days since he was told about the Kyuubi, and just like that, life had gone on as normal. Well, mostly. The Hokage had made sure that Naruto attended some counseling sessions after the incident, but there had not been much need. The old Hokage had taken time off to talk with him several times the past few days, more than he usually did. That had done more good than any amount of counseling would ever do. Iruka-sensei had taken him out to dinner at Ichiraku's several times as well, and if anything cured the soul, it was Ichiraku's ramen. So in between the Hokage, Iruka-sensei, old man Ichiraku and his daughter Ayame and the ramen, Naruto's life was better than ever. Now, however, Naruto found himself sluggishly awake with a mild headache and heavy eyelids that did not seem too eager to open. It had been a strange dream, about the old perverted white-haired man. It was not often that dreams were this easy to remember, either were they as realistic as this one had been. No Hokage hat, no flying ramen, no Sakura clinging to his arm, begging him to save her from some danger. It had just been him and the old man called Arrow Sennin. It had been a nice dream though. With a heavy sigh he returned his attention to reality. This was after all a big day for his career. It was time to deliver his shinobi registration papers, as a still heavily bandaged Iruka-sensei had told him about last night. As he got out of bed his thoughts drifted back to the old pervert in the dream. It was a strange sensation to miss an imaginary figure so much after waking up. The Arrow Sennin had a grandfatherly air about him, a cool grandfather that took the time to teach him stuff. Even so, it was only a dream. After all, Shikamaru's smart? No way. After a quick visit to the bathroom, he started preparing his breakfast. It wasn't much, just some cereal and milk that tasted a little funny. A worried glance into the bowl revealed nothing green, praise the gods. As he ate, he thought back on what the imaginary old man had said. Thinking while fighting? That sounded complicated. Even so, Naruto could not deny that it made a little bit sense. A ninja was supposed to trick and deceive. He had heard the same at the academy once. The one day that he had done really good. Maybe he should try it out sometime. It couldn't hurt really, not now that he was able to create so many more hands to work with. That thought brought a smile to his face. He was in fact able to use Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, a Jonin-level technique that not even Iruka-sensei knew. Who needed to think when you knew such an awesome move, right? Well, maybe. After finishing eating and placing his dishes in the sink for later, it was time to dress. It did not take long to find his clothes from last night, but the overall picture in the mirror disagreed with him. Naruto couldn't really put his finger on it, but it just felt wrong somehow. The orange and blue jumpsuit was his trademark. No one else used clothing like this. He studied the mirror closer. It was not the orange. It could never be the orange. No, it was the blue. The blue did not feel right at all. With some hesitation he took his jacket off and tossed it onto the dirty clothes pile by the door. It was no good. His t-shirt was blue as well. He quickly found an oversized t-shirt among his somewhat cleaner clothes. It was the color that told him it was the right choice. It was plain black, complete with an uneven-looking orange swirl on both the front and back. It was a little too big for him though. It was however the only thing black, so the size would just have to do. He hated to think of himself as small. It was an issue because he was among the shortest in class. When he put it on, the swirl looked even more uneven, almost hand-drawn. It was somewhat cool like that, probably the only reason that he bought it in the first place. Even so, black and orange was the only thing that felt right. It had to be that one. When he put on his goggles, he noticed his new Hittite. It would be better to wear that today, wouldn't it? He lowered the goggles so they hung around his neck. Just as he was about to try it on, he noticed the clock. It was much later than he had first thought, and that meant that so was he. Muttering curses under his breath, he dashed into the bathroom. He brushed his teeth quicker than what would have been recommended, and hurried out the door. The only thought that bothered him was that he did not have time to apply the cool makeup he had planned to wear. His Hitai was completely forgotten by the mirror. "What have you dug up today, Naruto?" asked the small red, white-haired toad seated on the Hokage's head. Naruto had dragged him away from the old sage's side at Myobokuzen to show him a new jutsu that he was working on. The blond man chuckled when the toad shifted his weight to get a better view of the scroll the blond man was unfolding. "Oh, you're going to love this arrow senin," replied Naruto. "I found a new way to use the concept of the Hiraishin." The toad looked thoughtful for a minute, and then a perverted grin plastered itself on its face. "You've discovered how useful it is to get in and out of the women's bathhouse?" Even as a toad, Jiraiya was still a pervert, and he knew that his godson had taken up his habit of sneaking a peek now and then, even if he only did so when his soon-to-be wife, little Hinata-chan, was there. Deep down he admired his blonde student for being in such a loving relationship, and for being so adept at stealth that he only spied when that particular Hyuga soon-to-be Uzumaki was present, not to mention that she was a recon specialist. Naruto chuckled at his sensei's remark. He would never change. Now, however, he wanted to show him something important. "It's about the way Hiraishin moves you from one place to another," Naruto said in a light tone. Jiraiya got more interested at that. As a seal master himself, he was always interested in new ways to deploy the art, and in the use of sealing techniques. No one could match Uzumaki Naruto. He listened as Naruto explained about light, energy, how to move that energy, complete with examples based on ramen flavors and the use of some specially sealed shadow clones as the test subjects. It was strange to see how Naruto finally channeled his energy into creative thinking. That was one thing he wished he had thought of back when Naruto was his apprentice. Then again, the Sasuke problem usually got in the way of creative thought on Naruto's part back in those days. What caught Jiraiya's attention from Naruto's explanation was the seal he intended to use on the clones. The blonde said it was meant to block out something that Jiraiya missed. "What is the seal for again?" "I missed it," he asked after unsuccessfully trying to puzzle out the meaning by himself. Naruto moved his head from side to side, unknowingly making it harder for Jiraiya to hold on. "Well, the technique will require us to use senjutsu, to break out of this reality. To get through the natural energies, so to speak." Naruto paused for a bit. "Well, the side effect can be carried over on the original, right? The seal is only a precaution, to avoid anything serious from happening." The toad chuckled. There was a time when Naruto would have laughed at these security measures, but Jiraiya knew that not even the mighty Hokage could argue with the pleading eyes of a loved one. Not to mention, Hinata-chan could be rather scary when she wanted to be. It was strange to think that the shy little girl had grown into such a beautiful and opinionated woman. Of course, she still appeared to be shy and timid, but just like Naruto, she was so much more than what she appeared to be. "Just senjutsu?" he inquired, just to reassure Naruto that he was paying attention. Naruto looked a little embarrassed. "Well, they must be able to materialize in another dimension without being cancelled. It's a little complicated, but the point is that I would really want to get to the intended location alive." Jiraiya could hardly comment on that logic. As Naruto was about to explain the proper design of the activated seal, the scene drifted into a hazy white, then suddenly into the black shadows of the room at the inn. With a mutter of surprise, Jiraiya jerked out of the pleasant slumber he had enjoyed. Something was not as it should be, and it seemed to take the Sannin a few minutes to get his thoughts on track. It was no ordinary dream, that was for sure. He had memories, new memories of things that had not happened, people he hardly knew. "Is this genjutsu?" he silently asked himself. No, this wasn't an illusion. He was awake, with a blinding headache that didn't come from alcohol, and knew more now than he did when he went to sleep. It was more than a little concerning to realize that he now knew about people that he had only heard rumors of the day before, without anyone telling him. He knew about techniques and jutsu that had yet to be invented, and most importantly, he knew what his godson was one day going to be. His face changed from that of confusion to determination, and he made a decision. Without wasting time, he got dressed and left the comfort of the futon behind. He was far from figuring it all out, but he knew for certain that he needed to get to Konoha. Things had to be done, prevented, confirmed. Not to mention that he had a responsibility that he had neglected far too long. At the hidden Myobokuzen Mountains, a gigantic old toad moved his head to the side, as it noticed a change in the course of fate and destiny. Visions seemed to overlap, and merge into new paths until they were one. The sage knew only that the child of destiny was ultimately responsible for the changes in his own life, and thus in so many other lives that it would touch on its path. It was not bad changes that had been done, things would just happen differently than what would have happened a few minutes ago. With a smile, the toad forgot what he had seen, only to see it again at a later time. Thus, repeating the entire experience again. Later that day, after he had once more seen the future, he requested the company of the unequaled pervert, so he could share his, then forgotten, knowledge with him. The Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato was looking at a picture of Uzumaki Naruto. The boy was wearing a black t-shirt with an orange swirl on the front, but not the orange jacket that was usually the preferred attire on the blonde troublemaker. Another difference from his usual look was that his goggles were hanging loosely around his neck, and not fastened around his forehead like they used to. The lack of any tie would have been the usual concern when taking registration identification picture, but the fact that the lack of anything to hold his hair away from his forehead made him look much more like a miniature model of the Yondaime Hokage than he already did, was a bit more alarming. If the picture hanging in the Hokage's study had been smiling, it would no doubt be even more like. Uzumaki Naruto was the secret child of the late Namikaze Minato, but that was a secret that had to be kept at all costs. The fourth had too many enemies, and they would love nothing more than to seek out vengeance. Even so, Sarutobi would never ask Naruto to take a new photo now, as he had done nothing wrong. With a smile he looked up at the boy seated in front of him. Sarutobi did wonder where the boy's Hittite was though. "This is a good picture, Naruto-kun, but where is your Hittite?" he asked with a grandfatherly voice. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, as he usually did when he was embarrassed. "I knew I want to wait until the team assignment Oyaji." Even though his lack of respect was present, the boy was acting uncharacteristically uncertain, something Sarutobi found a little worrying. Was the event with Mizuki having a bigger effect on the boy than he had first thought? Sarutobi had taken time to eat and talk with the boy a lot more than usual in the time after the incident. He had also assigned him to counseling sessions, just in case there was something Naruto felt uncomfortable telling him. Naruto had shown every sign of recovery, even happier now that he knew why people didn't like him. The prank he had pulled on his last session was just further proof that he was back to his old self. Sarutobi had to mentally stop himself from chuckling at the thought of the counselor that had been glued to his own chair. With a nod to the attendant, and a faint smile, he signaled that it was all in order. The attendant started collecting the necessary papers that Naruto needed to have as the Hokage cleared his throat before he spoke. "Congratulations, Naruto," he began, but was interrupted. The door burst open, and with a battle cry worthy of a 9-year-old, a little boy came charging towards the Hokage, intent on using a blunted practice shuriken that looked like it was made from cardboard in his assassination. He wore a yellow t-shirt and a long white scarf that trailed behind him. Not to mention some sort of weird helmet that let his hair stick out in the back. "Get ready to fight Oyaji," he screamed, right before crashing face first onto the floor. The rest of the room looked on in silence as the boy collected himself. "Nani? Where? A trap!" he shouted as he looked around for the non-existent offending object. In that moment a tall man in dark glasses, like his classmate Shino had, appeared in the doorway. He was dressed in navy blue like most Konoha shinobi, with a dark cloth that covered his hair. "Honorable grandson, are you all right? I am sorry, but there is no trap here," the tall man said in a rush, as he pushed his glasses further up on his nose. He immediately started to apologize to the Hokage as the boy now known as the honorable grandson fixed a stare at the only other minor in the room. The boy got to his feet and pointed an accusing finger at a still silent Naruto and declared in a loud voice, "It was you that tripped me. Admit it." Naruto, who had been silently wondering what was happening up until then, got up and yanked the younger boy off his feet by the front of his shirt. "No way. You fell all on your own, Baka." It might not have been the most graceful thing to do, but Naruto didn't like to be accused of things he didn't do. It was bad enough to be blamed for what he did. The tall shinobi that had entered after the boy was shocked to see the grandson of the village leader treated in such a way, and he immediately started to protest. "Naruto, are you mad? Let go of him this instant. Don't you know who he is? That is the honorable grandson of Hokage-sama." The shinobi was pointing and waving his arms around, as if he didn't know what to do with them. The aging Hokage, whom had been silently observing the turn of events, was a bit worried about the man's blood pressure. The honorable grandson, whom hated to be called honorable grandson, was silently staring at Naruto. Finally, honorable grandson challenged Naruto to hit him if he dared, a childish thing to do, but when you are 8 that wasn't much of a problem. Of all the things the boy had expected, it wasn't to have his challenge answered. Everyone was careful with him because of who his grandfather was, so never before had anyone dared raise a hand against him. Naruto, however, hit him over the head with little ceremony, much to the tall shinobi's horror and the Hokage's mild interest, and shouted that he didn't care who the boy was or who he was related to. In all the apologizing to the Hokage, done by the tall shinobi, Naruto took his leave with the necessary papers. He could have sworn that the apologizing man didn't even see him collect them right in front of him. As ninjas went, that one did not seem to be very observant. After Naruto had left, he became aware of someone following him. In retrospect, it was hard not to see it, as the boy was horrible at hiding. Rocks weren't square-shaped and certainly didn't have spy holes. Fences made up of vertical boards didn't have smaller patches of horizontal boards flapping in the wind. By shinobi standards, Naruto should have noticed the boy sooner than he actually did. With his patience reaching its limit, Naruto quickly turned around, as honorable grandson once again hid himself, holding his wooden fence camouflaged the wrong way up, again. "Stop following me! Don't you think I can see you, Baka?" Naruto shouted, pointing an accusing finger on the badly concealed offender. Strangely enough, the boy didn't seem very upset, or even that surprise that he'd been spotted as he calmly stepped out of hiding with a smug smile on his face. "You notice me. It's true what they say about your abilities," the boy stated with what he probably thought was a dramatic tone. Naruto was suddenly intrigued. Someone else had seen his skills for what they were, no matter that it was from a boy that was probably 2 or 3 years younger than him, and was impressed. Just as Naruto was about to ask the boy what he meant, Honorable Grandson pointed a finger at him and made his demand, "Let me become your apprentice." That rocked Naruto on his feet. He'd just become a genin, and now people wanted to be his apprentice? Even his ego had a bit of trouble to understand that logic, so he was glad when Honorable Grandson felt the need to elaborate. "Teach me the jutsu you used to defeat the Hokage. Please, sensei," he begged. Naruto had no idea who could have told Honorable Grandson about that. The old man had caught him entering the tower, and he had used his Oiroku no Jutsu to defeat him before his escape, something that said a lot about the supposedly strongest shinobi in the village. Little did he know that it was the Honorable Grandson who had found the elderly Hokage on the floor and managed to wake him up, using a bucket of ice-cold water. Naruto didn't hesitate for long before deciding to teach the younger kid the Hokage defeating technique, and thus took on his role as sensei for his first apprentice. After the day was nearly over, Honorable Grandson, Naruto still didn't know his name, finally managed to get the perverted technique right, and they took a well-deserved break. They were sitting on a log, eating a late lunch when Naruto finally got curious over why Honorable Grandson was so set on defeating the old man. "What's the deal with you and the old man anyway?" he asked casually, noticing how the question affected the boy. Honorable Grandson suddenly got very serious, and it took a moment before he answered. "My Ojaizen named me Konohamaru. After the village," he started, mentioning his name for the first time. "It's supposed to be for luck, but no one ever calls me by that name. It's always Honorable Grandson or something like that, never Konohamaru. You would think that it would be easy to remember, as I'm named after the village." The boy frowned before he continued. "They just don't see me, they only see my grandfather, but never me. That's why I want to become Hokage as fast as possible. I want to be respected for me, not for whom I'm related to." Naruto was shocked to hear how similar their reasons were. Naruto also wanted to become Hokage, so people had to acknowledge him, and would be unable to ignore him. Konohamaru wanted to be Hokage so people would see him, and not just his clan or as the grandson of someone else. Another thing that struck Naruto was how pathetic it all sounded. It sounded selfish and childish now that someone else said it out loud. There was much more to the title of Hokage than just the honor and respect that came with it. "Baka, no one is going to respect that," he said quietly, as much to himself as to his student. Konohamaru, however, took Naruto's statement as a personal insult. "What did you say?" "I said that no one is going to respect you for wanting to be Hokage just so you can be seen," Naruto snapped back. "To be Hokage is the same as to be respected by every ninja in the village. No one would respect you as a Hokage just because you want them to." Konohamaru was stunned at the seriousness in Naruto's voice. Naruto ignored it, and just continued, "The Hokage is the strongest shinobi in the village, and no matter how hard you train, it will always take a lot of work. There are no shortcuts to become the Hokage, and for you to become Hokage," he paused and locked eyes with Konohamaru, "you'll have to win over me, because my dream is also to become Hokage." Konohamaru didn't respond, but his face betrayed him. He was intimidated by the prospect for fighting Naruto. Before anything more was said, they were both startled by a shout coming from the trees behind them. "There you are!" It was the tall shinobi with the dark glasses from the Hokage tower. He had finally noticed that Konohamaru had gone missing and had tracked them down. Now he was standing on a branch, looking at Naruto with all too familiar eyes, cold and loathsome. "Honorable Grandson, now we should return home," he said as he jumped to the ground, ignoring Naruto as if he didn't exist. As Konohamaru shouted his protests, Naruto realized that the tall shinobi actually looked a bit familiar. Not in the way that he'd done something cruel to him or such, but rather a sneaking feeling that he should know him for some reason. His musings over why he should recognize the shinobi made him miss most of the lecture the shinobi in question had started, and only Konohamaru's attempt of his newly learned jutsu brought his attention back to the situation at hand. "Oiroku no Jutsu!" shouted Konohamaru at the top of his lungs as he weaved the necessary seals. The chakra gathered, and in a puff of smoke the form of the noisy little brat disappeared, only to be replaced by the form of a naked young woman, with nothing but drifting smoke to concealing the more unfamiliar parts of her female anatomy. It was the form that Naruto had drilled into him for the better part of the day, and if he were to be honest, a damn good henge. While the technique didn't work as well with this adult, it did have a noticeable effect. Nearly hyperventilating and in an obvious state of embarrassed shock, the tall shinobi started to protest and criticize Naruto's invention. "Wah, what a vulgar display! Not fur for a gentleman's eyes. And I will not fall for it." The man was talking so loud and so fast that it was clear how close Konohamaru had come in his attempt to defeat him. With that insight, Naruto gathered his own chakra to use his new favorite technique. The tall shinobi was busy battling a resisting Konohamaru by pulling his scarf, so he was unaware of Naruto, who was about to shout Kage Bunshin no Jutsu to launch his own attack. but a thought stopped him. Maybe attacking the shinobi was the wrong approach. Then, what can I do? Maybe it's not what I can do, but Konohamaru, he called out. Both the boy and the tall shinobi stopped what they were doing and looked towards Naruto. Use a henge and transform into the Hokage, Naruto yelled to his apprentice. The frown on Konohamaru's face bothered Naruto just a little bit. Why? That won't do anything, Konohamaru shouted back, still angry that his new attack didn't work. The shinobi, however, raised an eyebrow and adopted a questioning expression which was not lost on Naruto. Just do it, Baka, Naruto shouted back. If he were correct, this would change the tune of that arrogant bastard, both of them. Konohamaru was still frowning, but he obeyed. The boy made the correct seals and shouted henge, and was replaced by a picture-perfect image of the third Hokage of Konoha. The shinobi observed the transformation with an unreadable expression. Without a word, he pushed his glasses up on his nose before he smiled. Naruto had been correct. All the training he and Konohamaru had done was far from a lost cause. When he first started to teach the brat, Konohamaru hadn't been able to do a simple henge properly. Now he stood there as his grandfather, fully clothed in his robes, smoking his pipe. It was picture perfect. The shinobi looked from Konohamaru to Naruto with badly concealed approval. It would seem that your time was not wasted, honorable grandson, proclaimed the shinobi. Even so, it's late and you have to start early tomorrow. We still have a lot of ground to cover for you to become Hokage. Turning his attention to Naruto, the shinobi continued, I would like to talk to you after I have walked the grandson home, if that is possible. Naruto became a bit apprehensive of the sudden, friendly tone the shinobi used. The memories of his conversation with Mizuki was still fresh, so to have a stranger wanting to talk to him, after dropping off the only other person there, made him immediately suspicious. Still, the old goat had assured him that if anyone asked him to do something he was unsure of, he should let him know. He also recommended that such conversations should happen in front of witnesses, so, I'll be at Ichiraku's ramen, he told the shinobi. If there were any reliable witnesses in Konoha, it was Tsuchi and I am. The shinobi just nodded in response before turning back to Konohamaru. It's getting late, and you have made some impressive progress today. I think it's best you stop for today, to rest and recuperate. In the morning, we'll see how much you have improved, but remember to say goodnight before we go. Konohamaru had been observing the interaction and looked a little suspicious, but eventually he walked over to Naruto. Hey. Listen, he whispered. What was that? Why did he change his mind? I think he's impressed by your henge, he whispered back, not too sure of the shinobi himself. Konohamaru frowned. Why? A henge does no damage at all. It is a weak jutsu, he almost shouted in frustration. Before his last year at the academy, when he finally got it right, Naruto would have agreed with Konohamaru's logic. However, he'd used the jutsu in so many pranks that his perspective of the technique was much more colorful now. It's a very useful jutsu for other things than fighting, and you sucked at it when we started earlier today, he said honestly, if not a bit irritably. Konohamaru, as Naruto, didn't like to hear that he sucked at anything, even if he didn't anymore, but he grudgingly agreed. Hey Nizan, can you teach me anything more tomorrow? Naruto shook his head. Tomorrow I'll be assigned to a team, so I won't have much spare time. Just continue to work hard, okay? We can play again when I have some free time, okay? That seemed to hit a few buttons with Konohamaru, and his face instantly flushed in anger. Do you think we're playing? I'm training to be the next Hokage. Naruto patted the boy on the head playfully, but that only served to enrage the boy further. That's it. You are no longer my sensei. Konohamaru stopped his raging speech and pointed at Naruto for dramatic effect. From now on we are rivals. Even though Konohamaru's words were hostile, Naruto knew they weren't meant to be hurtful. Konohamaru saw him as a worthy rival. They shared the same ambition, to be Hokage. In other words, Konohamaru saw him as someone that could become Hokage. He believed in him. It felt truly good to have someone believing in him, but Konohamaru's display called for a real classy exit. Now to pull it off, he turned himself halfway around, showing that he was about to leave. Well then, we're rivals. It's too bad that I am far ahead of you. One day though, we'll fight for the title of Hokage. He started walking away and shouted back over his shoulder, remember, there are no shortcuts. You better train hard to catch up, Konohamaru. Naruto didn't see it, but Konohamaru was deeply touched by his words. Mostly it was because he called him by name. Later that day, the shinobi found Naruto at Ichiraku's. He seated himself so quietly that Naruto didn't even notice him until he placed his order. 1 bowl, miso ramen please. The sound of his voice, even though it was both calm and civil, and not really directed at him, startled Naruto so much that he nearly spat out the broth he'd been drinking. Luckily he didn't. Miso was his favorite flavor after all. Damn. You scared me. Naruto snapped at the tall shinobi, not really thinking of how his accusation reflected more badly on himself than it did on the one he was accusing. The shinobi just smiled at him. I apologize, he said, as Tsuchi started preparing his meal. Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Ebisu. I'm an elite trainer of shinobi, the personal trainer for the grandson of our beloved Hokage. Ebisu seemed rather proud of that fact. Even Naruto had no trouble seeing it. There was something that needed to be fixed though. His name is Konohamaru, Naruto injected before Ebisu had time to continue his explanation. Ebisu was a little confused over why Naruto would tell him what his charge's name was, but understood that it meant something. What had been said after he arrived where the two boys were eating had told him that something meaningful had transpired. He wouldn't be much of a jonin if he couldn't read the expressions on children's faces, after all. So he just smiled and pushed his glasses up on his nose before answering, "You're correct, of course. I'm the personal trainer of Konohamaru-san, the grandson of Hokage-sama. That's why I wanted to talk to you." Naruto glanced suspiciously over at Ebisu. There was no hint of impatience, but then again, Mizuki had been the same when he tricked him into stealing the scroll. "I must say that I was most impressed by how well you taught him the henge. And it only took you one day to do it," Ebisu continued, not noticing Naruto's questioning look. "Ignore the compliments. Must not be careless just because he's saying I'm awesome." Naruto furiously thought to himself. His ego was one of his own worst enemies. He caught Ayam's smile as she placed Ebisu's order. It was all the reassurance he needed. He wasn't alone here, but to do it in such a manner as unworthy of him, Ebisu finished sharply, after politely thanking Ayam. Naruto found the last sentence familiar in some way. It wasn't the words, as such, more the tone that he used. He had heard the same disappointed tone being used in the academy by Irika-sensei. "I thank you for your words of wisdom that you shared with Konohamaru-san," Ebisu continued. "He must learn what it takes to be a Hokage if he is to ever become one." "But why did you teach him such a disgraceful use of the technique?" Naruto realized something from how Ebisu bit of his words, trying his best not to think of the Oiroke no Jutsu. Ebisu really cared for Konohamaru, he really wanted what was best for the little Gaki, and not just because he was his trainer. It reminded him of how Irika-sensei would talk, whenever he tried to discourage his pranks by commenting on his abuse of his ninja skills. He would scold him for causing trouble and wasting people's time, but sometimes he would say something or have a look in his eye that told Naruto that he was actually impressed by how he used what he'd been taught in class. It was the same with Ebisu. He seemed impressed that Naruto had managed to drill the henge into Konohamaru, but he was not happy over the use they had found for the technique. The comparison effectively crushed any doubts about Ebisu's intentions, even it was hardly proof of anything. "He asked me to teach him the technique I used to defeat the Hokage," Naruto said happily, all previous doubts forgotten. Ebisu's reaction was comical to say the least. The second Naruto finished his sentence, ramen broth shot out of the elite teacher's nose. Even Tuchi and his daughter Ayam couldn't hold back a chuckle at the sight. Naruto was laughing so hard that he had trouble staying in his seat. Both Tuchi and Ayam were paying close attention to the conversation, as Naruto had begged them to do so. They were among the few people that Naruto truly trusted in the world. To Naruto, Tuchi was like a friendly old uncle, and his daughter Ayam was like a fun older cousin that always had time to spare while they worked. It shamed him that he'd often forgot about them when he felt lonely or down after failing something at the academy. It was probably because they weren't ninjas, but it still felt as something of a betrayal to not think of them as someone that he could talk to. What? Ebisu stuttered between coughs. "I asked you, cough, how you taught him the henge," he added when he had cleaned his shirt a little with the back of his hand and blown the remains of the broth out of his air pipe. The Hokage would never fall for such a trick, not in a million years. Naruto had finished laughing and smiled at the shinobi. "How about if you teach me about a jutsu, then I'll tell you how I taught him the henge, okay?" Naruto knew it was blackmail, but Ebisu had said he was an elite teacher of shinobi. He probably knew something cool. Not to mention, how often did you get the chance to have one-on-one lessons with the jonin? Ebisu thought it over for a minute before he nodded. "That is acceptable, but I won't teach you anything destructive, is that clear?" Naruto pouted, but nodded anyway. He was a genin now, a ninja. He needed to expand his arsenal even if it didn't cause things to explode. "Don't make it a habit of bribing older shinobi, Naruto-kun," Ayam interrupted in a playful voice. Naruto gave her his trademark smile. "Of course not, Ayam Onizen. We'll be looking forward to hear about the new jutsu tomorrow, Naruto," Tuchi added as they made to leave. "Goku Susumu." "Okay, I'll tell you everything about it, Ajisen." By Ayam Onizen. Ebisu gave his own, not so loud Goku Susumu, and followed Naruto as he left. Naruto didn't know why they suddenly took an active role at the end of the conversation, but he would later try to see underneath, and come to realize that the ramen chef and his daughter understood much more than they let on. Probably thinking that Naruto was still worried about something happening, they had made their presence apparent to the shinobi, just to show the shinobi that they now expected Naruto the next day, marking themselves as witnesses of the conversation. It was probably more for Naruto's benefit than anything else, but if Naruto hadn't already been convinced of Ebisu's good intentions, it would have been the most reassuring thing they could have done. On their way to Training Ground 16, Ebisu told him about something called tree walking. It was a simple thing that most ninjas should know, as it was more an exercise than anything else. "So, all I have to do is apply chakra to my feet, then I can walk on any surface?" Naruto asked excitedly. Ebisu pushed his glasses further up on his nose, and shook his head. "No, it's not just to apply chakra to your feet. You must apply just the right amount to generate a magnetic pull between your feet and the surface that you wish to walk upon." Ebisu had just demonstrated how it was done once, and Naruto had been very impressed. You didn't see a person walk upside down under a branch every day. His own attempt on the exercise, however, was met with failure every time. Even so, Ebisu had assured him that if he kept practicing, he would soon be able to walk up trees like any other shinobi. Ebisu had conveniently left out that the spot under your feet was the hardest place to manipulate chakra, figuring that Naruto was more of a hands-on learner, and that too much theory would probably just be a hindrance than anything else. Now that I've kept my part, could you tell me how you managed to teach Konohamaru-san the henge? Ebisu asked after the quick overview of the tree-walking exercise. Naruto nodded happily, but he had a nagging feeling that the simplicity of how he'd done it would be an issue. It's rather simple, really. I just told him what he was doing wrong when he did the transformation. Ebisu nodded, much like a child taking in a new concept. Or like an adult that was patiently waiting for a child to say what it wanted to say, even though they already knew about what they were being told. It helps when someone tells you what you are doing wrong if you fail at doing something. Naruto paused for a bit before he continued, just like when the academy instructors adjust your finger position when you are learning the hand seals at the academy. Ebisu tilted his head to the side. Helping step by step, you mean? He inquired. Naruto nodded. That, and to show him what he should look like, he answered. Ebisu adopted a questioning look. Like a demonstration? He asked in a shaky voice. He didn't show it too much, but his mind was filled with pictures of Naruto using that disgraceful jutsu in front of Konohamaru, over and over, corrupting his student's innocent mind with naked and sensual poses. It was a disturbing thought. Naruto looked thoughtful for a minute. You know, that would have saved us a lot of time. Ebisu was sighing inwardly when his fears proved to be unfounded. To think what kids would do today. Then Naruto's words hit him. That would have saved time? What do you mean, save time? He asked, almost fearfully. Naruto didn't register the fear in Ebisu's voice and continued in a cheerful voice. I took him to the hot springs. What? Shouted the elite teacher. You took the honorable grandson to the hot springs to show him what he should look like. The outrage on Ebisu's face was all too apparent. He was sweating again, and his eyebrow was twitching. He also seemed on the verge of having a nosebleed. What? I had to show him how he should look. You would have screamed if you'd seen what he transformed into on his first tries. Naruto shouted back. They were loud, but the initial hostility that Ebisu had shown was not to be seen. It was more like he was shouting out of principle. What is this behavior? Ebisu continued, such behavior is indecent. I will not forgive it. How rude. K-kids have no right to look through the hole in the fence at the second level, above the entrance of the women's bathhouse. Naruto's face went blank. Ebisu was a pervert, a closet pervert, since he was in denial. He just admitted to know about the frequently used spy hole for Konohagakure's peeping population, which was a rather large amount of the inhabitants. You know about the hole too, Naruto informed the panicking shinobi. I do not know what you're talking about. Ah ha 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 ha. No, kids today. Not knowing their place. Yes, that's it. Heh, imagine me looking at naked women. How absurd. How rude. Ebisu continued, all the time smiling like a madman. This time, Naruto didn't think twice about summoning over 20 clones to his side. Kaige Bunshin no Jutsu. He shouted, filling the clearing with Naruto's. Ebisu seemed to calm down a bit. He almost seemed relieved to get his mind off what he had just heard. So you want to fight me now, eh? He taunted. I warn you, I am a Jonin, not a Chunin, like the traitor Mizuki. I will not go down easy. Ebisu's tone was light, almost relieved. Naruto didn't even think about his own smile, and how it gave a clear message that he had no serious intention of harming Ebisu. Naruto didn't answer the taunt either. He and his clones just weaved the necessary hand seal and cried out henge, in union to a baffled opponent. With several puffs of smoke, not one Naruto was left to be seen. In their stead were over 20 young blonde girls with thin lines of smoke covering up their more personal areas. If that wasn't enough, all the girls suddenly started swarming the baffled shinobi that was now sweating like a pig, with a stupid expression on his face. They latched onto arms and legs, caressed his chin and kept making excited noises, all in the effort to break this closet pervert once and for all. With a final twitch of his eyebrow, the shinobi shot backwards, off his feet, propelled by a stream of blood shooting out of his nose. I call that my Harimu no Jutsu, Naruto stated excitedly to the now unconscious Ebisu. He figured that the smile on the pervert's face was an indication of him not being seriously harmed. At least this pervert was no longer in denial. The effectiveness of the technique was astounding. Not only had its predecessor defeated the village's strongest ninja, now this new variation had defeated a Jonin. If he kept this up, he might be able to create techniques strong enough to defeat an entire village like this. A thought of Sasuke's face with the expression Ebisu had after his defeated entered his mind's eye. The mental image was enough to make Naruto bark out in laughter, and he didn't stop laughing before he was well home. When he finally opened the door, it was about 11 o'clock. He was tired but happy with how the day had played out. The prank at the end was just a bonus, a joyful change from the highlight it once had been. He'd gotten a student, a rival, and respect for his ability as a teacher. Not to mention that he had learned something cool. At least how to do something that was cool. Once he got it right, however, it would be really cool. All in all, it had been a great day. As he walked by the mirror, he paused. He looked different without his jacket on. His goggles hung around his neck also did something to the overall picture. He looked carefree, more relaxed. Maybe he should continue to just use a t-shirt. Cammy knew that some days could get unbearably hot in the jacket. He could perhaps have a short-sleeved mesh shirt underneath, like Shikamaru used under his open jacket. With a nod, he decided to try it out. He needed to place the Uzumaki symbol on his new uniform though. He hated working with needle and thread, but it would probably be worth it. His goggles were usually placed on his forehead, keeping his hair out of his eyes. Now they hung rather loosely around his neck, looking much more carefree. He also saw that if the goggles had been his height, it would be perfect protection for his throat. People always say that I'm a knucklehead anyway. He took off his goggles and placed them by his height, before picking up the official sign of Konoha and tied it around his neck. He thought it looked good, so he decided that he would try wearing it like that the next day. Maybe people would notice. Later, as he got ready for bed, he thought back on the large Erosenin that he'd dreamt about the night before. It had been a great dream, and he had actually learned something from it. Not many could say that they learned important lessons from dreams. He hoped that he would dream about the old man again. Maybe he would teach him a cool jutsu next. That would be really cool. With that final thought, he went to sleep. Jiraiya wasn't even halfway finished with his goal for the day. There was so much new information to acknowledge. Threats, events, jutsus, and detailed mission data that had yet to play itself out. He had started to write things down, just in case he would lose the memories as fast as he gained them. At first he had thought it was the works of a genjutsu, but after a reverse summoning to the great sage's side, he had been convinced. Naruto had actually found a way to either travel in time, or the more likely alternative, found a parallel dimension, which was this one. The funny part was that Naruto had flunked out with minor calculations and not with the big ones. He had been so preoccupied with the danger to the original through use of Kage Bunshin that he had focused entirely on the security aspect of the jutsu. He had completely forgotten about where the memories would go after they dispelled. The memories, which should return to the original, didn't return to the other dimension, as there were a couple of sources of chakra that was indistinguishable from their sources nearer to them in this dimension. So, as energies goes, they sought out their source's counterpart, which was the same but much closer. So here was Jiraiya, not the one that was a toad sitting atop of the Hokage's head, but a younger version on the same individual, with a nation's worth of information. The old shinobi was thankful to the dimensional counterpart of his godson for not only arming Konoha with enough knowledge to fight off several invasions and terrorist attacks, but enough to prevent all-out shinobi world war. With that though came sobering realizations. His godson would probably be in the same situation as he himself was in. More knowledge than what was healthy. He would have to send word to Konoha about how important he would be, so they wouldn't think him crazy or worse. Naruto, the little boy that he named. He'd completely forgotten about that fact until this morning. He knew who he was, of course, but he didn't know the boy. He'd seen him a few times over the years, but hadn't talked to him since he was 3 years old. Too busy keeping an eye on Orochimaru's whereabouts and now the Akatsuki organization. It was important work, and there were few others that could do it, but it still saddened him to think about how lonely Naruto had been growing up. With the memories, there also came the knowledge and impression he'd gotten through conversation with Naruto throughout his other life. Naruto had been safer, but that wasn't enough for a child. Even though it had shaped and formed a person out of legend, which Jiraiya himself had created, and brought peace and prosperity to the shinobi world, he felt both apprehensive and happy to finally meet Naruto. It was no telling how he'd act now that he too knew what could have transpired in the future. Would he be angry, happy? Only time would tell. With a sigh, he continued his recording work. There was so much to be done. Birthday parties were something that happened to other people. At least, that's what Naruto had always thought. Naruto had never concerned himself about his birthday while he grew up. The only difference from any ordinary day was that Tsuchiya-san and Iyamonizen congratulate him and gave him an extra treat and a visit from the old Hokage. There was never a celebration for him like the other children had, but that was alright. The small sign of recognition was enough to make the day special. That was why he never really thought about birthday celebrations and parties. It was only some obscure events that happened to other people, and was, for some reason, filled with happy laughter, and the whole thing had been one of life's many mysteries. He'd always hoped to be invited to one, of course, but never in a million years had he ever believed that someone would ever bother to throw him one. But now that he and his friends were all seated around a wide table in the back of the restaurant, the realization was starting to creep up on him. They were actually celebrating his birthday. They were celebrating his 18th birthday. It had been such a surprise that he had barely been able to utter 3 of 4 complete sentences since they told him. Before that, his only true goal that day had been to beat Chuji in a ramen eating contest, which he had every plan of fulfilling as soon as he got his senses back. Now, looking around the table at all his friends as they talked cheerfully among themselves, he couldn't stop himself grinning like an idiot. Kiba and Lee were having a heated discussion over Lee's claim that tortoises made better ninjas than dogs. Tenten was trying to calm the two, with minimal success. Niji was calmly explaining table manners to Sai, and the reason why people didn't like to hear him talk about the human reproductive organs while eating. Shikamaru was snoring audibly. He claimed it to be a natural defense he had developed against Ino's voice, and orders that could be ignored, who were busy talking to her boyfriend Chuji, who in turn was happily eating from what was left on the table. Right across from Naruto, Iruka-sensei was interviewing Shino about his upcoming lecture at the academy. He was supposed to teach the children about poisonous insects and spiders, but Iruka was worried that the children might not understand everything he would say, and tried to give the younger man some pointers on how to interact with children, something Shino never grasped completely. Hinata had been there too, a moment ago, but she had forgotten something and ran off to get it. Hyuga Hinata. She was the sweetest, kindest, and the most beautiful woman alive, and she was his girlfriend. If he could make his smile any larger, he would have. She was without a doubt the best thing to ever happen to him, and he missed her already. The only people missing were Sasuke and Sakura, but they were on their way. Knowing the two, he guessed it to be Sasuke's fault. He was the only person that was as inexperienced with relationships as Naruto himself. Sakura had been rather shocked by the fact that the Uchiha genius was a real klutz when it came to his knowledge of girls. As he sat there thinking about relationships, a couple of soft, slender arms snaked their way around his neck and hugged him from behind. He turned his head and was greeted by soft lips as they placed a light kiss on his cheek. "Happy birthday, Naruto-kun." He couldn't stop the blush that colored his cheeks, but he didn't care, because Hinata was back. "Thank you, Hinata-chan," he replied happily and saw that she also sported a cute blush from her own action. Seeing the two brought a doll from Ino and Tenten, and a playful snicker from Kiba, which were quickly silenced by someone's elbow. Hinata just smiled and placed a cake that she had picked up on the way on the table so the others could reach it. She then seated herself next to him and placed a small gift in his hands. She didn't say anything, but her eyes urged him to open it. "Can I open it now?" he asked, just to make sure that he read her correctly. Getting together with Hinata had made him more considerate of others, and he was working hard to improve his social skills, clearly showing the influence Hinata was having on him. Hinata didn't say anything, she just smiled shyly and nodded. She too had changed somewhat since they got together. Her confidence was greater than ever, even as her shyness remained. She had also developed a playful attitude, and was not above pulling a prank on him from time to time, but her kind nature always prevented her from doing anything too embarrassing. Getting an okay from Hinata, Naruto tore into the wrapping like a happy 5-year-old, eager to find out what Hinata had given him. Sakura had commented that such behavior made him look greedy, but he couldn't help himself. The gift Hinata had gotten surprised him. It was a book, featuring research on animals and animal senses. The release date revealed that it was very new, released earlier that year. Her choice of present confused him a little, but realization soon dawned on him. He had mentioned his interest in developing new detection techniques that could be taught at the academy a while back, but he had been out of ideas. It was just like Hinata to remember something like that. Ever helpful of others, she wouldn't miss a chance to aid others in reaching a goal, and helping him help the academy, she would walk through fire for such a chance. Faster than she could react, he spun around and embraced her in a strong hug. "Thank you, Hinata-chan." Hinata squealed in surprise and her pink blush suddenly bloomed into a rosy red from the sudden show of affection. Nevertheless, she hugged him back almost immediately. "You're very welcome, Naruto-kun," she replied slowly, fighting her stutter that threatened to reappear at her momentary surprise. Sensory apparatus in the animal kingdom, a thorough and detailed overview of the workings of animal senses. He heard a familiar voice, one that tried its best to hide any sort of interest, say when he finally let go of Hinata so she would be able to get back to her own seat. Sasuke had entered the room, and was now holding the book while he read the title out loud. "I didn't know you were interested in biology, Naruto," he commented in a smug voice, suggesting that he had more to say. Before he had time to add his usual sarcastic comment, however, Sakura walked out from behind him and over to Naruto's side, giving the blonde a nearly backbreaking hug. "Happy birthday, Naruto." Sasuke, who was holding her hand, also gave him an uneasy smile and congratulated him, with no trace of the comment Sakura had interrupted. Most people would write the uneasy smile off as his disappointment at being interrupted, but Naruto knew that Sasuke was very happy to have Sakura stop his less acceptable behavior. His uneasy smile was just the outcome of Sakura's happy one. It was the smile she used when she was annoyed, disapproved of something, disagreed with someone, or was violently upset. Having been on the receiving end of that smile on several occasions, Naruto knew exactly what category that smile fell into. He didn't even have to look at Sasuke's hand, the one that Sakura was currently holding, which by some strange coincidence seemed to have lost its color, and if you listened carefully, produced faint cracking noises, to know who her anger was directed at this time. "Biology, you say?" she asked, trying her best to cover up Sasuke's late intention. She didn't say anything more, but she gave Naruto one of her asking looks. She was probably as confused by the topic as nearly everyone else. Both of his old teammates were doing well for themselves. Sakura was a superb medic and soon, if the rumors were true, to be the director of the hospital. Sasuke had risen to the station of ANBU captain, showing just how good he really were, even now that he no longer possessed the famed, now extinct, dojutsu. But all that was of little interest among their friends. The fact that they were now dating was of much greater interest to the village at large, not to mention their close circle of friends. Naruto was about to explain when Shino felt the need to give his 2 cents. It has a good collection of scientific facts on various insects' sensory abilities featured. The Aburame was such a quiet individual that Naruto had nearly forgotten that he was there with them, so Shino's input startled him somewhat. He was careful not to voice his thoughts about it though. For a man of mysteries, Shino could be unusual touchy. "You've read it?" Sakura asked as the 2 newcomers seated themselves at the only 2 remaining seats at the table. The others, who had been waiting for them to arrive, started to help themselves with the cakes. Shino shook his head. "No, my clan helped supply research that was to be used in writing it," he replied, not even looking up. Silence followed, until Kiba snapped his fingers, shifting the attention to him. "Oh, I remember. I think my sister said something about a man asking questions about dogs and their sense of smell. That was months ago. Yes, it should have taken several years to gather all the necessary information from experts and from shinobi clans no less. I would say that the writers are some very brave men, to go around asking questions from gatherings of people that secure their trade by keeping those secrets," Shino replied, a touch of respect in his voice. Naruto had to agree with that statement. He was well aware of the value secrecy had in the shinobi world. After all, a secret that is known is a secret that can be countered and used. "As I recall," Shino continued, "the man who came to see us was a civilian. He was careful to ask specific questions and made it perfectly clear that anything we did not wish to share, he would not pry into. He was a very reasonable individual." "Who is he?" asked Tenten. She, as the rest of them, wanted to know about these people. Shinobi didn't make a habit of sharing information, and any civilian who had the courage to knock on their door and ask questions that could be considered trade secrets was people that was worth hearing about. "Yes. Who is the youthful individual that would go so far to fuel the fire of his trade?" Lee joined her. Sakura looked at the last page, which would normally feature the author of any given book. To her surprise, there were none. It says that the book was researched and published by the university in the capital city, here in Hino-kuni. The head researcher's name is Uchi Yamada. It says here that he's 62 years old. Lee just got more excited when he heard this. "YOSH. The flames of youth is strong enough to even burn brightly within our senior citizen." He cheered loudly, causing Tenten to hit the back of his head. Niji settled on a humored smile as Lee tended the growing bump on his head, before settling back to hear the rest of what Shino had to say. "Yes, the man that visited us was at an advanced age," Shino confirmed. "But as it is published by a university, it would be reasonable to assume that the book holds the combined work and research of several individuals. I, for one, am glad that research is now being done by civilians and not shinobi." Sakura, Hinata, and Shikamaru nodded their agreement to Shino's words. The others were more confused. After a short time, Konohamaru lost his patience and had to ask, "Why is it better?" Shikamaru was the one that answered, noting that Shino was getting tired of talking, probably from the way he was eyeing the cakes the others had already started to eat. "It's because research done by shinobi has ultimately one usage: combat. But research done by and for the civilian population no doubt will be used more peacefully, and ultimately spread through trade. It's a mark of progress." It was about this time that Ino, who had gotten bored with the conversation, turned the attention back to something that could be described as a more pressing matter. "What's more important now, however, is this rumor that I've heard. Why on earth would you wish to have an eating contest on your birthday, Naruto?" She shot in before Shikamaru had time to say anything more. The sudden change of topic didn't faze anyone. They all knew Ino well enough to know that she would get bored eventually, and then take matters in her own hand to solve the problem. The eating contest was news to some of his friends, and from the look on the faces around the table it was clear that Ino wasn't the only one that wanted to know why he would want one. They tried not to show their interest, of course, but by this time Naruto was a better ninja than any of them, arguably of course, and was able to spot their curiosity, not on Shino of course though, who was happily digging into his first piece of cake. The question deserved an answer, but Naruto doubted that it would satisfy their curiosity. "I knew that today I would be the one to choose what to eat," he responded with a sheepish smile, scratching the back of his head. It was received as he had expected. Several blank stares were directed back at him, and a humored smile from Hinata and Sakura. With a happy sigh he continued, "I know that I only have a chance to win if it's ramen. I'm not dumb enough to challenge an Akimichi to an eating contest without being able to choose what we should eat." This brought another snicker from Kiba and a sigh from Hinata. She was used to her boyfriend being more thoughtful, but this was a petty challenge that Naruto had been planning for nearly half a year. Not to mention that Naruto was a big enough fool to challenge the Akimichi to eating contests without being able to choose the dish. The heavy-set shinobi seated by Ino's side just smiled. Chuji was just as sensitive about his weight as he had been when he was a child, but Naruto did make a valid point. Not the part where he said that he would not challenge his family without the choice, as he had already challenged several Akimichi to eating contests, and lost every time, as they, the challenged party, would have the choice of weapon. It was almost always barbecue, the fuel of the Akimichi, and now the bane of Naruto. On the other hand, the challenges had made Naruto more prone to eating vegetables, much to Hinata's secret delight. It was only so much ramen the normal human body could take before getting sick of the dish. Naruto, on that matter, was a completely different story. Chuji gave his girlfriend a peck on the cheek, making Ino blush from the light touch of his lips. He got to his feet quietly and made his way over to Naruto. Naruto was getting worried that he had insulted one of his kindest friends and was about to apologize when Chuji lifted him as easily as a feather and tucked him under his arm and roared, "To the ramen stand! And let the battle commence!" Konohamaru found the scene hilarious and started laughing so hard that it broke into a coughing fit. With a shake of her head from Chuji's antics, Ino started patting the younger boy, still a kid in their eyes, on the back. He was a close friend of Naruto, and they constantly schemed new ways to trick an opponent with new perverted jutsu. Their latest creation was not exactly perverted, but the effect it had on kunoichi and civilian women was terrifying. Ino shuddered at the though of the dreaded Shibi no Jutsu. It had the ability to reduce any female to the state of a 9-year-old schoolgirl getting a pony. Naruto and Chuji were out the door before anyone else. As Chuji made his way to their destination, Naruto enjoyed the setting sun, visible on the end of the street. It was beautiful until it started to beep. Wait, the sun was beeping? Naruto's hand fumbled clumsily over the nightstand, trying to silence the evil device that was responsible for his torment. It had brought him back from a land where he had lots of friends, and lots of ramen. What it had done was unforgivable. Resisting the urge to toss the infernal device out the window, he got up in a sitting position and tried to get a grip on reality. The sharp rays of the sun helped him with that task, but it was far from comfortable. It just wasn't fair, denying him all that ramen, something his belly eagerly agreed upon. A few seconds later he sighed in defeat. He didn't have time to dwell upon life's troubles now. He needed to get to the academy. After all, he didn't want to miss team assignment. With an exaggerated stretch he fell out of his bed. It was tempting to just stay there, on the floor, but he decided against it. He needed to get ready for the big day. Just like the day before, the dream he had still lingered after he woke up. He started to move automatically through his morning routine, but his thoughts were occupied with what his mind had cooked up during the night. There had been no pervert in this dream, just him and friends. Naruto didn't have many friends, just a couple of people that tolerated him more than others. Shikamaru, Chuji and Kiba were the only people of his age that he could consider to have something of a friendship with. After all, they had played together at times, both after and during classes at the academy, much to Irika-sensei's dismay. In the dream, however, he had lots of friends. People like Sasuke team, Shino and Ino had been there, and people that he had never even heard about. He would have remembered the one with the bowl cut, especially when you added those eyebrows. As for the others, he had never even spoken to Shino. Well, he tried to, but it got boring when the larger boy told him that his suggestions were too chaotic and irrational. But still, he had been there, meaning just as much as his other friends. Neither had he ever gotten along with Sasuke, the genius bastard, who had been like a best friend in the dream. Strangely, he didn't feel what he usually did towards any of them. Usually, just thinking of Sasuke would make him irritated, but not today. What was really different from any other dream, however, was his dream girlfriend. It had been totally different from any other dream he had ever had involving a girl. When he usually dreamt about a girl, it had always been Sakura. And those dreams nearly always had some sort of danger for him to save her from. It was strange to think of Hinata in such a role. She was cute, true, but she always looked away when he saw her, and whenever he tried to talk to her, her voice would be little more than a whisper, making it hard to hear anything she said. Dream Hinata, however, was very different from the one he knew. She was just as kind as the Hinata he knew, but she was much more open and outgoing. She was also older than she was now, and thinking about how close she had been to him in the dream almost made him blush. There had been no danger, no peril to save people from. There had just been her and their friends celebrating his birthday. It had felt so real, like he could just reach out and touch her hair, and he could imagine her fresh flowery scent. It made him feel tingly all over. Now, just the thought about the dark-haired girl from class made him feel the same as on his first day at the academy. It felt like his belly was filled with fluttering butterflies and that there was no cloud in sight. It felt good, just like a fresh start. With some difficulty and regret, he pushed the thoughts away. He didn't have time to dwell on dreams today, as he really needed to be on time. He didn't want to miss being assigned to a team after all. A stray thought about teams brought back the sensation from his dream. There it had been him, Sakura and Sasuke, something he probably would have thought as both a blessing and a curse yesterday. Now it really didn't sound all that bad. With renewed effort, he shook the distracting thought away and got back to his morning routine. His previous attempt at suppressing the dream just made him double his effort, and he fared much better this time around. He ate his breakfast in a hurry, not even checking his milk for anything green this time. He was sort of glad that he didn't taste much of it when he gulped it down, as it was a bit more chewy than normal. The t-shirt he'd decided to wear was waiting for him in the bathroom. He'd taken some time last night to attach the Uzumaki swirl on the shoulder, but it wouldn't remain there if he had to spar against someone. It was only fastened with some thin thread, but it was the best he had time for last night. If he wasn't such a fast healer, he would have more than just a few bloodstains around the patch to show for his effort, but that was life. He pulled the t-shirt on with little ceremony, and proceeded to brush his teeth. He considered brushing his teeth the most important thing to do in the morning. He still remembered the horror stories Hokage Ajisen had told him about what happened to people that didn't brush their teeth, which he had told Naruto after he discovered that the Hokage could remove his own teeth. What had really made an impression were the pictures he had shown him. Naruto shuddered at the thought of those dreaded photos. He had nightmares for weeks. When he was done with everything that he needed to do, he picked up his hitai and fastened it loosely around his neck. It did, as a matter of fact, make him look cooler, if that was even possible. It would also be perfect for protecting his throat if it was needed. Naruto lingered a little in front of the mirror. He traced the lines of the leaf symbol with his finger, and smiled. It was happening. He was actually a shinobi, a real shinobi. The first step towards his goal, to become the greatest Hokage ever. Hinata entered the classroom with her eyes locked firmly on her feet. It was a habit she thought she had rid herself of months ago, but today she didn't care about her apparent relapse. He wouldn't be there today. Naruto was the only one to not pass the Genin exams this semester, and seeing him so downtrodden and depressed afterwards made the whole thing so much worse. He had worked so hard and trained for hours on end, but it hadn't been enough. She had seen him practice after class several times, and whenever he didn't get something right, he would just get back to his feet and try again. That was the reason that she admired him so, the ability to always get back up and just try again, no matter what anyone said. On the Genin exam, however, he didn't get a second chance, and thus he failed. He'd been so depressed after that Hinata couldn't help but feel like she should have failed as well. It wasn't something she should feel guilty about, that she knew, but it was one of those irrational feelings that you couldn't argue with. He had tried harder than she had, harder than anyone, so why shouldn't he also be allowed to pass? Why couldn't they test them on the Henji no Jutsu instead of the Bunshin no Jutsu? She knew, without a doubt, that he would have passed that test easily. She had seen him work on the transformation technique so many times, so much that he had perfected it to the point that he was probably the best in their class with that particular jutsu. He was so familiar with it that he not only knew how to impersonate people flawlessly, he even started using it in his pranks, showing that he was able to utilize it properly as well. Sadly, his perfection of the henge was on the cost of the Bunshin, which they had chosen to test them in. After all his hard work, it just wasn't fair that he should be the only one to fail. With a depressed sigh, she reasoned that not looking for him wouldn't magically make him pass and appear in the classroom. She lifted her eyes from the floor and looked around the classroom. What she saw made her heart skip a beat. Naruto was there, and he was waving at her. She didn't know why, or anything else at the moment, but she automatically averted her eyes, hiding the blush she felt blooming on her cheeks. Her feet automatically made their way towards her seat, while her lungs started working again with a considerable effort. Unconsciously, she had started to tap her fingers together, trying desperately to regain focus as she quickly made her way to her usual seat on the back row. Her head was tingling with all sorts of questions and feelings. What was he doing here? Did he pass? Why was he waving at me? Should I have waved back? Did I upset him? Just seeing him there made her happy, and her belly felt as if it was full of fluttering butterflies. The tingling sensation felt wonderful, even though it threatened to make her giggle uncontrollably. It was the visible blush she could do without, and she made an effort to hide it. Taking a deep breath, she managed to calm herself enough to think things over more rationally. Naruto wouldn't have waved at her, would he? No, who would? Wanting for an answer to her question, she dared a glance up from the desk. She noted that Sakura had entered behind her, so Naruto had probably been waving at her. The butterflies settled, and the light tingling was replaced by an uncomfortable hollow feeling in her gut. It was the same she got whenever he tried to ask Sakura for a date. She watched as Sakura made her way over to where Naruto was now talking to another classmate. She observed with a sad heart as Sakaki walked away, and Sakura demanded that Naruto should move out of her way. She knew how Naruto would react when Sakura was around. He would start to blush and comply. Then eventually, he would ask her for a date, which in turn would for some reason give her a bellyache. His reaction this time, however, surprised her. She couldn't hear what was said between them, but Naruto just looked at Sakura in confusion before turning towards the person seated on the other side of the bench. With his head turned away from her, she couldn't see his expression, but as the person sitting there was Uchiha Sasuke, she could imagine that he was frowning. At least, that's what she thought at first, but some instinct told her she was wrong. Somehow, his body language seemed light, more carefree than it normally did when he was near the number one student in class. It was as if there had never been any tension between them in the first place. She didn't have time to think over it anymore though, as then the pink-haired girl proceeded to trample over her idol, seating herself next to Sasuke. Hinata lost focus at that point. She was afraid Naruto would see her staring at them, which he had done before, and think her even creepier than he already did. What she'd seen didn't prove anything, of course, but the small change in behavior pattern was enough to make her imagination go crazy with ideas. He could have looked at me, she thought to herself. She could hardly believe it. She fought the thoughts back. It was no use getting worked up over nothing. It could easily have been anything else. After all, he didn't have any reason to notice her at all. She had done nothing to deserve his attention. She knew that she was being silly, but Naruto was the person she admired more than anyone in the entire world. She could still remember the first day she'd seen him. He had been so strange in her eyes, and yet, he had been so amazing. It had been her first day at the academy, and she'd been terrified by the new experience. She was alone among people that had known each other for years. That had been terrifying by itself, but the added pressure of not embarrassing the clan was also a heavy burden. It only got worse when they started testing their skills in front of all the other students. When they were to test their skills in the Bunshin no Jutsu for the first time, she had been so terrified that she'd actually felt herself tremble. She would be one of the last to try, but that was a small comfort, as people seemed to pass with no more than 1 or 2 tries each. Then, it had been Naruto's turn. He walked up to their teachers, looking more confident than anyone. When he formed the seals, however, only one sick-looking clone appeared. It was normal to fail the first try, even though the others usually didn't produce a thing when they failed, so he had been told to just try again, and again, and again, but it was always the same result. After 5 attempts, people had started to snicker, and some even started to laugh. Hinata, however, had been transfixed. Naruto had become more and more frustrated at his lack of result, but he never gave up. He didn't start crying when people laughed. He never lost his confidence, even as he failed again and again. This display of failure after failure was amusing to the other students, but what Hinata had seen was bravery unlike any other. In the end, he had imitated the sick look on the Bunshin, and been told to keep practicing. Seeing how he handled losing, seeing how he never let his failure get to him, and just got back up, she could not help but admire him. He was everything she wanted to be. He faced everything she was afraid of, but seemed to just shrug it off as if there was nothing to it. When her turn came, she was still terrified. On her first try, she produced nothing. Neither did she do anything on her second try. She had started to lose her nerve, but the thought of how Naruto refused to give up made her feel like she could try again as well. On her third try, she produced a perfect Bunshin. It lasted only a couple of seconds, but it was enough to let her pass, and she knew that she owed it all to Naruto. Was it any wonder that she became as fixated on the boy as she did? She had been so smitten that she actually sought out stories where the hero's name matched Naruto. She had done it on a whim, after school one day, and to her surprise, she found one book where the hero was named Naruto. It was called The Legend of the Gutsy Ninja, and it had been her favorite book ever since. Another surprise came when she read it and discovered that the hero was just like Naruto in character as well. Everything about Hiro's personality reminded her of the real Naruto. It had only served to make her even more curious about the boy. That was also when she taken to following him after school. It was an act that she wasn't very proud of, but she couldn't resist. Just seeing him train was enough to lift her spirit and make her forget her own failures. He would train for hours on end, never stopping until he managed to do what he tried to do right just once. And even with little natural talent, just like her, he would not bow to taunts or critic. He would just laugh in its face and try again. He just would not give in. Oh, how she wished she could be like him even just a little bit. When Hinata seated herself, Hinata's response caught Naruto off guard. She'd seen him waving at her, he was sure of it, but she'd broken eye contact so suddenly that he now found himself very unsure. He watched as she hurriedly made her way back to her own seat, looking intently at her own feet while she pressed her fingers together. It was as if she tried her utmost not to show interest in him. That thought hurt more than he would have liked to admit, but he was also strangely glad she didn't wave back at him at the time. When he'd seen her enter the classroom, he'd found it strangely hard to think straight, and he just waved at her automatically. He didn't know what he would have done if she'd waved back, but a growing hollow feeling in his gut desperately wanted to know why she'd been so intent on not looking at him. With a dawning realization, he came to a terrible conclusion. She didn't want anything to do with him. It made sense. They had never actually talked that much. And the times they had, she made sure that she didn't look directly at him. Maybe he disgusted her like he did with so many grown-ups. The notion that Hinata could actually hate him felt unreal. The track his thoughts had taken brought a lump to his throat, and the hollow feeling was replaced by a deep pit where his stomach should have been. Does she hate me like so many others do? Just the thought of her hating him made him feel sick. What should he do? Taking a deep breath, he calmed himself down. It didn't matter if she hated him now. Everyone hated him now, not Iruka-sensei, Hokage Ajisen, Tsuchi Ajisen or Iamonizen, but most others did, but he would change that. He would do anything to try and get her attention, no matter how long it would take. One thing was for certain, he would not give up. He would never give up. He couldn't just ask her out, however. That hadn't worked with Sakura, so why would it work with Hinata? He quickly realized that he was making excuses not to ask her out. It wasn't that he didn't want to ask her out, he really did. It was just a sneaking fear of failure and what ifs. What if she said no? What if she thought him a loser? He needed to think, needed to understand and take things one step at a time. Maybe I should try to get to know her first and try to win her heart from there? His thoughts were interrupted by a classmate leaning over him. What are you doing here, Naruto? This is only for real shinobi, he informed Naruto with what he probably thought was an intimidating voice. Sakaki was one of the less attentive students in class, but somehow he had managed to pass his exam just like all the others. Sakaki was also an opportunist in every sense of the words. He would try and act tough when he had something going, but usually, he was all talk and no bite. Naruto leaned back and lifted the Hittite from around his neck so the tough guy wannabe could see it clearly. I am a real shinobi, see? He grinned. He enjoyed the way Sakaki suddenly seemed less sure of himself. The boy's face went from surprised, to angry, to uncertainty. Luckily that was all he was prepared to argue, and he just left without saying anything else. Naruto was happy about that. It wasn't often he had the benefit of winning a disagreement with others, and even less often was the times when it was they who left speechless. Usually it would be him that would argue wrong and make a fool out of himself, one way or another. Caught up in his own small victory, he didn't even notice Sakura approach. Get out of the way, Baka. I'm going to sit with Sasuke-kun, she demanded, disrupting Naruto from his thoughts. In his surprise, he only looked confused at Sakura, and the only intelligent thing he thought to say was the word huh? Collecting his thoughts, he turned his head around to see why exactly Sakura wanted to sit next to him, when she clearly said that she wanted to sit next to Sasuke. The genius was there, sitting with his hands folded in front of his mouth, looking directly at the blackboard, as if he was ignoring the entire world. He didn't have time to say anything, or get clear so Sakura could pass, as the girl in question proceeded to climb over him, not even trying to be careful. As he was being trampled, he heard Sakura say, "Good morning, Sasuke-kun. Is this seat taken?" In an all-too-sweet voice that was completely at odds with her violent act. She settled herself between Naruto and Sasuke, but the boy which held Sakura's interest didn't even bother to look at her. It bothered him that the Uchiha had been able to seat himself without him noticing, but he quickly realized that he was more irritated by his own slip than he was about Sasuke sitting there. It was also strange to realize that he didn't feel more than mild affection towards the pink-haired girl. He wasn't angry with her at all for the manhandling he just received, and neither was he jealous of the way she was ogling Sasuke. It would appear that he really was over his crush on her. Actually, he could not even imagine asking her out anymore. The thought just felt wrong, and it wasn't just because she was totally focused on the brooding genius. Sakura looked like she was about to start drooling from the way she stared at the Rookie of the Year. Only the occasional giggle made it clear that there still was some sort of mental function going on. Personally, Naruto never liked Sasuke that much. He was arrogant, unfriendly, and never helpful. What really edged Naruto about Sasuke, however, was that he didn't seem to even try when they learned something new. Everything they did seemed to come way too easily for the genius. It was something Naruto would never understand. Strangely, he didn't feel much hostility towards the arrogant team. The dream he had seemed so real, and that Sasuke was, if not overly friendly, still his friend. Sasuke noticed Naruto looking at him. "What do you want?" he asked, glaring in Naruto's direction. Before Naruto had time to think of an excuse, however, Sakura pointed innocently at herself and asked in that sweet voice, designed to show innocent interest, "Me?" She provided the perfect excuse for Naruto, and he wasted no time, silently mouthing the word that, before Sasuke had time to correct her. It was bad enough to be caught staring, and at a boy no less. With a smile he leaned back in his seat, rather proud about what he had just done. Sakura and Sasuke were together in the dream, and they had seemed happy. Why not get them together in real life as well? Sasuke, seeing that Naruto was not going to elaborate, just dismissed the whole thing, ignoring Sakura altogether. The class calmed down when Iruka entered the classroom. Naruto was probably the only one to notice that their teacher was still not fully recovered. Then again, he was probably the only one that knew about the injuries. He could still see some bandages around Iruka's neck, and the sight made his stomach contract a little bit. The Chunin was carrying just a piece of paper and not the usual pile he usually dragged with him to class. He walked to the desk and turned to face the center of the classroom. He placed both hands behind his back before he started to talk. "From this day forward, you are no longer students at this academy," he began. "You are now full-fledged shinobi." He raised a hand to stall the building noise. When they were quiet again he continued, "But among shinobi, you are mere novices, Genin. The lowest of the low." He paused a little to let the message sink in. "Your greatest challenges all lie ahead." He stopped once more for theatrical effect. Probably a side effect of having the attention of the whole class for the first time in years. "The next step is the assignment of official duties to you all on behalf of the village." He seemed to be losing some of the less attentive students at this point, but noted to his surprise that Naruto was actually listening. As for the others that were not, the next bit would certainly change that. It always did. "We will begin by dividing you into 3-man cells," he stated louder than before. As he had guessed, several heads came up from their station on their desk when he said it. "Each of which will be mentored by a Jonin, a more senior ninja who will guide and coach you as you become familiar with your assignments." This was received with silence. The students looked like they were going through mental lists of who they wanted to be on teams with, and Iruka did not look forward to crushing their expectations. He noted that Naruto glanced towards the back of the class. As if on cue, Hyuga Hinata's head dropped enough that Iruka was unable to see her face properly. Naruto then proceeded to slump over his desk, as if disappointed by the girl's reaction. Hinata had started to press her fingers together like she usually would when she was nervous. That was something to remember the next time he would treat the boy ramen, but first he needed to crush some dreams. It wasn't a pleasant thing to do, but it was better to just get it over with. I made the selection so that each cell's abilities would be approximately equal, was all he managed to say before the protests, and outrage was sent flying. Naruto was just as outraged as the rest of the class, mostly because there weren't that many he would like to be on the same team with. Sakura was a given, he liked her, as a friend. More surprising was that he would also want to be on the same team as Sasuke. They had been teammates in the dream, hadn't they? And that looked like it was going well. Even so, mostly he would like to be on the same team as Hinata. His mind wandered and he missed who was on the first teams. When Iruka started on the second, he thought about whom else he would have no problem being placed on team with. Kiba, Chuji and Shikamaru would be fun. He had nothing against Shino, but he hadn't really understood him, not even in the dream. Dreamino was much like her real counterpart, noisy and bossy, but he thought she would be nice enough. It would be fun to have someone to argue with. Even so, his thoughts kept drifting back to Hinata. If he was placed on the same team as her, he would see her every day. He would have lots of chances to get to know her, and she would get used to him eventually. It would be perfect. Anyone else would be fine, as long as he ended on the same team as Hinata. Even as he was thinking how great it would be if he ended on the same team as the ones that had been in his dream, he was totally unprepared for what came next. When he heard Iruka say the words, Team 7 and Haruno Sakura, his ears perked up. When he proceeded to say Uzumaki Naruto, Naruto's jaw nearly hit the desk. Could it be? To his left he noticed Sakura's shoulders drop in defeat, but he didn't care. And Uchiha Sasuke, Iruka finished. Naruto didn't believe it. He didn't even notice Sakura's victory punch right next to him. He was downright shocked to have a dream come true, literally. He wasn't disappointed with his new team, but he still wished that he'd been put on a team with Hinata. Iruka continued to name Team 8, and a part of Naruto's brain that was still functioning complimented Kiba and Shino for being so lucky as to end up with Hinata. He was a little sad that he wasn't one of them, but at least she would be with friendly people. Well, they were friendly in the dream. His own team, however, was still his main focus, and with some effort he turned his head towards Sasuke and Sakura. His expression was quickly noted by both of them, as it resembled very much that of a goldfish. Sasuke only glared back at him. Just don't get in my way, he said threateningly. That sentence was enough to snap Naruto out of the daze he was in. He didn't shout back, just turned his head away and pouted irritably. He was disappointed by Sasuke's response, not angry. It was the first time he actually didn't feel like shouting back at someone that talked down on him for a very long time. It just didn't appeal at the moment. Okay everyone. I'll be introducing your senior Jonin instructors this afternoon. Until then, you're dismissed. Iruka finished. Naruto had missed who the other teams would be, but he noted that Chuji and Shikamaru, who were seated a couple of benches ahead of him, seemed happy enough. Well, Chuji was anyway, so they probably ended on the same team. As recess came, Naruto didn't know what to do. Hinata seemed to be in a hurry to get out the door after her new teammates. It made sense, he supposed, but a lingering thought that she was trying to avoid him would not leave him. Sakura was on her way out the door as well, along with the rest of Sasuke's fan club. The genius had already left when Iruka told them they were dismissed. It was sad to see how the people he dreamt about acting so differently in real life, but that was probably just because he wanted to see what he had dreamt. After all, they weren't acting much different than any other day, except maybe different groups. Everyone was gathering in their selected teams so they could eat together. He noted that Shikamaru, Ino and Chuji were walking together. Chuji and Ino had looked happy together in the dream, so he could not help but smile for them to be on the same team. It would seem that everyone he recognized in the dream had ended up on teams with one another. It made him feel a little bit uneasy for some strange reason. Not the team selection, just the dream about it. He wrote it off as educated guesses made in his sleep. After all, there were other people in the dream as well. People that he had never even heard about or seen. It was probably just his mind playing tricks on him. Even so, he was a little jealous that the others were going to have lunch together with their own teams, while his team had no such plans. Too bad he was on a team where people didn't want anything to do with one another. Well, the others didn't want anything to do with him. Naruto furiously murdered that thought. He wasn't the sort of person to feel sorry for himself. Living alone for several years had taught him that self-pity did nothing but make things worse than they actually were. If he was to be on the same team as the arrogant team and his former crush, he might as well try to make the best of it. I am going to make friends with my new team, no matter the cost. With that thought he got up to try and find his team. When he got outside he noticed that the mob of fangirls seemed to have scattered. Some was looking for something among the trees that was spread throughout the academy area. Others were running back and forth between the few buildings that also was school property. It didn't take a genius to guess what they were looking for. Naruto had to shake his head at their behavior. Of course he's not hiding himself at the academy grounds, he thought to himself. Sasuke used to eat by himself 2 buildings down the road. He and Kiba had made a habit of tracking him down from time to time, just to give the location to his groupies whenever they felt like teaching him a lesson for showing off. Naruto had to admit that Kiba was much better at finding the genius than he was, but he wasn't too bad himself. He didn't see Sakura anywhere, until he made his way down the road towards Sasuke. He spotted his female teammate sitting by herself on one of the stone benches lined along a path, leading towards the trade district. She looked a bit sad where she sat, eating alone, and Naruto had to think twice about who he was to talk to first. After a short internal debate, he settled on Sasuke. He now knew where Sakura was, so if Sasuke wasn't where he was supposed to be, then he knew where he would go next. He hurried towards his destination, just in case Sakura decided that she wanted to move before he got back. He found the genius, exactly where he thought he would be. He was standing in front of an open window on the second floor of a storage building, so Naruto decided that he would try and surprise him. After all, who didn't like surprises? He darted into the building and made his way up to the room behind Sasuke. Silently he crept inside and over to the window. Sasuke didn't seem to notice him at all. He was still eating his lunch, oblivious to Naruto. With an effort of will, Naruto managed to not think of his own lunch that was still resting in one of his pockets. His stomach was the only part of his body that would openly sabotage him every time stealth was required. He stood up slowly and leaned on the window frame, still unnoticed by Sasuke. The genius seemed too occupied with keeping a lookout for his fan club to even notice Naruto, or so he thought. "What do you want?" Sasuke inquired in a rather irritated voice without turning around. It was clear that he wasn't happy about having his lunch interrupted, and his tone made it clear that Naruto should be quick about it. Naruto scratched the back of his head. "I thought that since we're supposed to be on the same team, we should try to bury the hatchet, so to speak," he answered with the best smile he could muster. Sasuke turned around to look at him for a second, and then he just turned back and made to leave. "As I told you before, just leave me alone and don't get in my way." With those words, Sasuke jumped away, leaving Naruto alone once more. Naruto had to fight his own impulse to shout after the arrogant bastard. How on earth could he ever think that he could ever be friends with that team? But even as he thought about it, he knew that he was more irritated on Sasuke than angry. Was this because of the dream? It felt like Sasuke was just trying to deal with something and wanted peace, and weird as it sounded, Naruto could sort of understand that. Now that he tried with the first one, he took off in the direction of the other. Before jumping off the roof, he noticed Shikamaru and his team eating on a landing, on the building opposite from where he stood. They were 2 floors higher up, but they still saw him. He waved at them, but Chuji was the only one to wave back. He knew Shikamaru well enough to know that he was way too lazy to do anything unnecessary, so he wasn't surprised that he didn't wave back. Then he headed over to the bench where he'd seen Sakura eat her lunch. However, when he caught sight of her, she was talking with Sasuke as he passed by. Not wanting to interrupt their conversation, Naruto lingered behind a corner for a while. Sasuke wasn't interested in talking to him, but if Sakura got him talking, that would be good for him, wouldn't it? After all, company was what helped Naruto get over the Mizuki incident. After a minute or two, he looked around the corner to see if they were still talking. To his disappointment, Sasuke had left, and Sakura was looking even more depressed than she had before. She rested her head on her arms and her lunch was just sitting there by her side, nearly untouched. Just the sight of her made Naruto a bit nervous about talking to her. When Sakura looked like that, it was usually best to just let her be, in his experience. No, he needed to at least try. As he jogged up to her, he called out, "Hey Sakura-chan. Can I talk to you for a minute?" Sakura raised her head to look at him with wide eyes, startled by his greeting. She seemed to bite back her first response before she answered him. "Yeah, sure. What did you want to talk about?" The way she said it made it sound somewhat forced. As if she really didn't want to talk to anyone, but were still going to try. Naruto was unsure why she was so friendly towards him. Usually she would snap out some accusation or rude dismissal. "I thought since we are going to be on the same team, that we might as well be able to talk a little, if that's okay?" He responded, a little unsure of himself. After a moment she just nodded, much to his surprise. "What did you want to talk about?" she asked as he seated himself on the opposite side of the bench. Naruto took out his lunch before answering. He really hadn't thought of that. I tried to talk to Sasuke earlier, but he wouldn't talk to me." "Have you spoken to him?" Naruto began, knowing that they had. He realized that it was the wrong approach, as Sakura's mood instantly darkened. It would seem that whatever they talked about was none of his business. As the moment dragged on, Naruto found the silence more and more uncomfortable. As he unpacked his lunch, a sandwich and some orange juice, he thought over what subjects he could try. "So, what did you think our Jonin-sensei will be like?" he tried. It wasn't the most engaging subject, but Naruto wasn't used to talking to girls at all. Who knew what they would want to talk about? Sakura took a deep breath and regained her focus on the here and now. "I don't know what kind of sensei we will have," she replied, seemingly not too keen on the subject. After a while, she looked over at him with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry Naruto, I have a lot on my mind right now. I need some time to think, okay?" Can we talk about this another time? She asked silently. It was clear that she wanted to be alone, but still tried to be civil about it. He was surprised that she was this polite, even when she really didn't want to be there, so he just smiled kindly and nodded in answer to her question. Whatever Sasuke and Sakura had talked about, it sure had made some changes. He halfway wondered if Sasuke also would have been changed after their conversation. Maybe Sasuke isn't that bad after all? He thought to himself as he watched her leave. Suddenly his thoughts were interrupted by his stomach. It was roaring like an animal, and Naruto now knew that some of the food he had eaten must have been bad. There was a time and a place for thinking, and a time and a place for action. Naruto had to hurry to get to the latter. After recess, Hinata spent her time watching Naruto form her seat. He was acting differently today than he usually would. He hadn't tried to ask Sakura out on a date even once that she noted. More noticeable, however, was that he had yet to work himself up over anything, not even when Sasuke told him to stay out of his way. She had succumbed to using her Byakugan and read their lips for a second and caught some of what had been said. All he'd done was turn away and pout, the adorable childish pout. She had to turn her head down towards her desk when she thought about how cute Naruto could be. It was an automatic movement to hide her blush. When she looked down towards Naruto's seat, she was surprised to meet his eyes again. She was stunned, dazed even. Only the familiar feeling of her blushing cheeks made her lower her eyes towards the desk once more. She pushed her fingers together in an effort to keep calm. It was a childish habit that helped her to keep focus when she was unsure of herself. When she dared to look up again, Naruto had turned around and seemed slumped over his desk. Was he sad about something? Maybe Sakura-san turned him down? Irika came in through the door, followed by 9 other shinobi. If Hinata had guessed right, this would be their Jonin senseis. Be quiet, children, Irika started. One of these people, he indicated the other 9 shinobi with one hand, will be your new sensei in your time as Genin. He paused to make sure that they were paying attention to what he was saying. As there were no interruptions, he continued, every team will be assigned to their own sensei that will from now on be responsible for your training. Listen to what they say and do not disrespect them. They are in effect both your team leader and your immediate superior. He started listing up all the teams, starting with Team 1. Hinata's thoughts were only halfway listening, as she occupied herself by looking at the back of Naruto's head. This was probably the last she would see of him for some time, and it was hard to not give away her sorrow at the thought. The only comfort was that they were in the same line of work, so, one day, maybe they would work together. It was a small thing to hope for, she knew, but it was more or less realistic. That was, if she didn't mess it up too badly. Silently scolding herself for thinking like that, she decided that she wouldn't let that happen. She would work hard, just like Naruto would. She would not give up. Irika's voice brought her back to reality, when Team 6 moved down towards their sensei. Now, Team 7's sensei will be Hatake Kakashi. Silence followed Irika's words. None of the other Jonin seemed too surprised or particularly worried about one of them being missing. Well, I'm sure that he'll turn up sooner or later, Irika added, probably because he wanted to get on with team assignment. Hinata was a little out of it as well, but only for a second or two. Okay, Team 8's sensei will be Yahi Kurenai. A tall woman in some very strange clothing took a step forward. Hinata was struck by how confident she looked, and how strange her appearance was. She was dressed in some strange white and black jacket that seemed to be made of a long, white fabric with a black line in the middle, about as wide as a paper napkin, loosely wrapped around her body to form a jacket. The only thing that resembled usual clothing was her sandals, her hittite, and a red sleeve on her right arm that somewhat pulled attention away from the confusing outfit. The other sleeve was bare. Her hair seemed almost wild and strands of it stood out here and there, making it look messy, but the way it moved when she did said otherwise. Her eyes seemed to consist of 2 separate layers of red, making her overall appearance both stand out and disorienting. Their eyes met, and suddenly Hinata remembered that she had seen this woman before. On her first day at the academy, she had been the special Jonin that had escorted her to the school grounds. She'd been dressed differently then, in a simple Jonin vest and dark pants. Hinata felt a little guilty for not recognizing her right away. As Hinata made her way down the side of the classroom, with her other 2 teammates, Yahi Kurenai smiled at them. "Follow me please," was all she said when they reached her. Without any other words she led them out of the room. Hinata was the last one to leave, and just as she went out the door and took a last look back, she met Naruto's eyes once more. It made her legs go wobbly, and she could feel the blush coming. Even so, she couldn't hide her shy smile properly as she turned away to catch up with her teammates. She remembered her own promise. She would work hard and do her best. Just like Naruto would. Back in the classroom, Naruto had noticed the smile and felt the butterfly effect in high gear. She may have looked away as she always did, but she smiled, and what a cute smile it was. Naruto was getting more and more agitated by how late their sensei was. It had been nearly a half hour since Irika left, and in effect, that would have been the end of detention, on a regular school day. Why was their sensei so late? He was starting to get hungry again too, and there was no conversation in the other 2. Well, Sakura-chan was trying to talk to Sasuke team, but she didn't seem to make much progress. He tried once or twice to talk to them, But Sasuke had only told him to shut up, and Sakura had said that she was busy talking with Sasuke. At long last he got out of his seat. He needed to move around. He walked over to the blackboard, to see if there was something he could use, anything. He needed something to do. Stop it, Naruto, he heard Sakura say. Both Sasuke and Sakura were looking at him in annoyance. He was fiddling, and it seemed to annoy them. Why are we the only cell whose teacher hasn't shown up yet? He asked back at them. All the other teams have already gone off with their teachers. Even Iruka-sensei has gone. He resumed his scavenger hunt with an irritated sigh. Sadly, all the chalk was taken by the teachers when class ended. It had been like that since Naruto had used them on all the seats in the classroom during his second year. That had been a good prank. What the teachers did leave was the chalk eraser, covered in chalk dust. With that, inspiration struck. He moved a chair over to the door. It was the sliding type, all the indoor doors at the academy was. He took the eraser and placed it between the door and the wall, making a nice trap, of the good old classic type. Hey! What are you up to, Naruto? He heard Sakura say as he made the finishing touch to his booby trap. He jumped down from the chair he had stood on before her replied, It is his own fault for making us wait. She had no doubt already seen what he was up to, so there was no need to explain. Sakura huffed in annoyance, Grow up. I want no part of it. Sasuke, who had yet to rise from his seat, just looked at Naruto with a bored expression. There's no way a superior shinobi would fall for such a simple trap, he commented. Naruto scowled in annoyance, and turned towards him. Well, I don't see you doing anything, genius. He added the last part with a little sarcasm. He was getting fed up with how Sasuke acted towards both him and Sakura. Behind Naruto the door creaked open and the eraser hit the masked person that entered right on top of his head. Naruto, however, didn't notice, and just continued talking. I mean, you haven't done anything but brooding all day, he ranted on. His patience with the Uchiha genius had been tested, and he had not resorted to shouting at all. He needed an outlet. The masked shinobi, whom had just entered, didn't say anything. He only raised an eyebrow in what could easily be a questioning look. Sasuke and Sakura had gone quiet as well. Both because their new sensei had arrived, and they were a little disappointed, and because Naruto had not noticed. I mean, instead of just being negative, couldn't you try to contribute something? If my trap is that bad, why don't you show me how it is done? Naruto turned around to point at the eraser, so he could continue his complaint. His finger found the eraser, perched on top of chalk-covered masked head. He wasn't prepared to come face to face with an unnervingly familiar face that he had never seen before, so his rant stopped dead in its tracks. The shinobi scratched the back of his head, making chalk dust fall from his hair, along with the eraser. Well, this is a nice start. I think we'll get along, like oil and water, he said with a smile. 5 humiliating minutes later, they had moved to the roof. Kakashi settled himself on the railing, while the newly made genin seated themselves on a couple of steps, leading to a wind-protected area intended for the study of trees. Naruto was seated to the left of Sasuke, and Sakura had placed herself on the Uchiha's right. Not one to beat around the bush, Kakashi began. Now I would like you all to tell a little about yourselves. At first he was met with silence. Until Sakura asked the question, like what? You know. The usual your favorite things, what you hate most, dreams, ambitions, hobbies. You know, things like that. Again he was met with silence, until Naruto chipped in, help us out here, sensei. You go first, show us how it's done. Sakura gained some courage after Naruto started talking. After all, it is a widely known fact that no one wants to be first to talk about something with a teacher. That's right, after all, you're a complete stranger to us, a mystery. Sasuke stayed quiet. Oh, me? Kakashi started with a perfectly blank face. My name is Hatake Kakashi. I'm the sort of person that doesn't feel like talking about his likes or dislikes. My dreams for the future are, well, I have lots of hobbies. His face didn't show any sign of it being a joke. Sakura was the one to say it. He said a lot, but all we learned was his name. Naruto nodded in agreement. This teacher was something else from what they were used to. He looked bored, but not like the other teachers did. He just didn't seem that interested. Well, now it is your turn. Starting with the one on the right, Kakashi said, nodding towards Naruto. Naruto straightened himself, and began talking. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. What I like is instant cup ramen. What I like even better is when Iruka-sensei treats me to ramen at Ichiraku's ramen stand. What I hate is the 3 minutes it takes before the ramen is ready after pouring in the boiling water. He started fiddling with his hitai while he talked. Kakashi seemed to either get very bored or really tired as Naruto talked. Naruto didn't notice that, but he did pause for a second or two and continued with more determination. My dream is to one day become a better shinobi than the Hokage. Then all the villagers will have to acknowledge my existence. Kakashi's eye opened a bit more, but that's all the reaction the masked man seemed willing to give. My hobbies are pranks and practical jokes, Naruto finished. Kakashi scratched his head where the eraser had hit him. I see next. Sasuke didn't move, but started talking. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. There are plenty of things I dislike, but I don't see that it matters, considering there is almost nothing I like. It seems pointless to talk about dreams, that is just a word, but what I do have is an ambition. I plan to restore my clan. And there is someone I have sworn to kill. By the end, the atmosphere had gone cold. No one said a word, but even Kakashi had adopted a serious expression. Considering he was wearing a mask and his Hittite covered his left eye, that said something. Naruto didn't know why, but Sasuke's words sent chills down his spine. The words were scary, true, but it was something deeper than that. He couldn't explain it. He just instinctively knew that it would lead to something terrible. Sakura's eyes, however, were filled with admiration. As if Sasuke's cool factor had just been raised to a new level. The mood was lifted when Kakashi, at long last, broke the silence, and finally the young lady, signaling for Sakura to begin. Sakura blushed slightly and glanced over at Sasuke before she started. I am Haruno Sakura. My favorite thing is, well, it's not a thing, it's a person. A boy, and that boy is Hum. She looked over at Sasuke and blushed. Let's move on to my dream. Instead of telling them her dream, Sakura blushed and squealed in delight. Naruto couldn't help but wonder if Sakura might have a perverted side to her as well, from the way she was acting. The next thing Sakura said broke Naruto's line of thought completely. I hate Naruto. Naruto's jaw dropped. He thought she was nicer now. What she and Sasuke had talked about earlier seemed to have worn off, and now she was back to her old self. He could only hope that they would talk again soon. He liked friendly Sakura much better. After a while, Kakashi told them that it was enough. I believe we all understand one another. Formal training begins tomorrow. Naruto perked up. This was what he had been waiting for. With a salute, he asked the question on everyone's mind, a bit louder than the other two would have, of course. Yes, sir. What will our duties be? Inside, he was even more ecstatic. This would be his first real mission. Neither Kakashi's voice nor expression changed. Our first project will only involve member of this cell. He started. After a small pause, he looked at them and said, survival exercise. He was met with uncomfortable silence once more. Again it was Naruto who broke it. Survival exercise. Sakura, once more being the one to ask the real question, noted. But why would that be a mission? Our school days were full of survival training, but you'll have to survive against me. It won't be your typical practice, Kakashi replied. Naruto didn't say anything, but he suddenly got a weird feeling in his gut. There was something that Kakashi had yet to tell them. What kind of practice will it be? Sakura inquired after a short pause. Kakashi stayed silent for a couple of seconds before he asked, You sure you want to know? He was answered with nods from two of the Genin. Sasuke had yet to contribute anything. Of the 27 members of your graduating class, only 9 will actually be accepted as junior-level shinobi. The other 18 must go back for more training, Kakashi informed them. He placed his head in his palm, with his fingers shading his visible eye. The effect was surprisingly intimidating. The test we're about to perform has a 66% rate of failure. No one said anything after that. There was suddenly a weight in the air that hadn't been there a minute ago. Even Sasuke looked nervous about the prospects of failing. After the shocked silence, Naruto was the first to attack the new information. What about our graduation test? He shouted. Was all that work for nothing? Even as the words left his mouth, he knew that they weren't really true. A small portion of his mind was arguing vividly that no amounts of work could be a waste of time, and the lessons learned would always be worth the trouble. But at the moment he was too worked up to really listen to it. Kakashi, oblivious to Naruto's internal debate, continued on as he would. Oh, we wanted to eliminate all the hopeless cases from your ranks. The ones who are left are the only students who show true potential. Naruto didn't reply, but several thoughts were fighting him as Kakashi continued to tell them what the exercise would involve. Naruto was thinking of Hinata. Would she fail? Somehow he doubted it. She would probably beat any test that was sent her way with ease. He just knew that he needed to make Genin if he were to see her again, let alone look her in the eyes. He was so occupied with his own thoughts that he only caught the end, when Kakashi told them not to eat any breakfast, because they would only throw it up again. Not eating breakfast? That sounded horrible. Kakashi moved towards them and took out 3 pieces of paper. The details of your assignment are in this handout. Memorize it and don't be late. Naruto took the paper and tried to read it. To his horror, it was all written in kanji, something he always had trouble reading before. But that was just it. He'd had trouble reading it before, now he managed to read it easily. He understood every symbol, every sentence at first glance. When he looked up, their teacher was gone. Where did he go? He asked the other two. Sasuke didn't answer. He only grunted and walked away. He had curled the paper into a paper ball, having already memorized it. Sakura followed close behind him. Maybe we could train a little Sasuke-kun? She suggested timidly, getting ignored just like before. Hey, wait up! Naruto shouted as he made to follow. Sakura whirled on him, anger burning in her eyes. Go away, Naruto! Sasuke-kun and I want to be left alone. When she was done shouting, Sasuke had disappeared. She seemed genuinely confused at first, and then all her attention was back on Naruto with a vengeance. This is all your fault. He was actually really scared of her when she got like this. Stars would usually follow close after, as Sakura packed on hell of a punch. Surprisingly, no stars appeared. Sakura just took a deep breath, and left without saying anything, leaving Naruto to get his heartbeat back on track. Sakura had been really weird today. First, she nearly pummeled him when she wanted to sit near Sasuke. And then she had been nice and polite when he talked to her during recess, after her talk with Sasuke. And then she was back to hating him. Was all girls like that? He was actually getting even more worried about asking Hinata out. What if she was the same? He didn't believe that Hinata would punch as hard as Sakura did, but for some reason, he didn't think she needed to. The whole Hinata situation somehow just got more complicated than it already was. Even so, he wouldn't give up, just take it a bit slower. It was evening when Naruto finally got to Ichiraku's for supper. Hello Naruto-kun, how'd it go? Tochi asked when his favorite customer seated himself. Hello Ajisen, I don't think it went that well, Naruto answered. Can I have some miso ramen please? I came in through the back door of the stand, carrying several newly cleaned kitchen ornaments. Oh, hello Naruto-kun, how'd it go last night? Did you learn anything good? She asked. Tochi chipped in before Naruto could answer. Don't worry about it Naruto. I'm sure that you did your best, no matter what that shinobi said. Only took a second or two before she caught on to what her father meant. As long as you did your best, that is good enough, she said reassuringly. Naruto got a bit confused. What are you talking about? He asked as Tochi went to work on the ramen. The jutsu that Ebisu fellow was supposed to teach you yesterday. Didn't you promise to tell us all about it? The ramen chef replied, not even put off track by the misunderstanding. What was it you were talking about? Seemed to catch on to her father's meaning faster than Naruto would ever have done, as she too seemed to keep with the subject, even if she missed the start of the conversation. That you did Naruto. Now how'd it go? Naruto took a moment to realize that they had changed subject before he started to tell them about what he had learned. It was nice to have someone to talk to when you lived alone, and Tochi and had always time to listen. He told them about how Ebisu had defied gravity, and just walked up the tree, as if it were nothing. He considered lying about his own attempt, but decided against it. If there were someone that deserved the truth, it surely was these two. It was so hard. I felt like 1,000 times trying to do it, but I haven't got it yet, he finished. 1,000 times was a little exaggerated, he knew, but it was the feeling that counted. I only managed to do 16 steps before I fell down today. Tochi placed the order in front of Naruto. Smiling kindly he said, don't worry about it Naruto, you'll get it in the end. Thanks Ajisen, itadakimasa. By the way Naruto, what did you mean when you said that it didn't go so well? Tochi inquired as Naruto ate. Naruto looked up and was about to answer when chipped in. Don't talk with your mouth full. Naruto obeyed automatically, and swallowed the noodles before talking. Thanks Onizen, he smiled at her, before answering Tochi. I was talking about the team assignment today. What happened today Naruto? The ramen chef asked, leaning over on the counter. I'm not sure. We just didn't get along I guess, replied Naruto after gulping down another mouthful. I was placed on a team with Sasuke team and Sakura-chan. Tochi raised a questioning eyebrow. I thought you liked that Sakura girl? Yeah, I did. I do, but not like that anymore. Naruto tried to explain. Who had let her father talk, decided that Naruto needed to be rescued from what she liked to call the inquisitive parent. Leave him alone Otosan, no need to try and embarrass Naruto while he eats, she said as she placed a glass of water in front of Naruto. Let him tell us how it was without interruption. Tochi just smiled and nodded. Still remembered how it was like the first time she had a crush on someone. Her father wouldn't shout, not tell her not to be with him, and just ask calm questions. It was rather effective really. She had been too ashamed to even look at the boy for nearly a week afterwards, for no reason at all. After a few seconds, and another mouthful of ramen, Naruto proceeded to tell the ramen-making duo about his teammates, how they were and how they acted. He told them about his new teacher and how he had introduced himself, all the while they just listened. That was, until he told them about the survival exercise that they were going to go through the next day. Specifically, the advice Kakashi had given them to not eat breakfast. He told you what? Tochi asked with a little trace of outrage detectable in his voice. He waved his hand in the air, gesturing that Naruto didn't need to repeat what he just said. Breakfast is the keystone for a good day Naruto. It gives you the energy you need to get started. Nodded her agreement. You know what? If what you said is exactly what he said, then he didn't really order you not to eat, he just told you that it is a bad idea. Now listen to us Naruto, we may not be ninja, but we are chefs. That means that we know about food. And trust me when I say, if what you'll be doing is hard enough to make you throw up, then you will need something to start the day with. She moved to the back of the stand and reached for something in a paper bag on the floor. She came back with 3 oranges and placed them on the counter in front of Naruto, who in turn, only regarded them with suspicion. These are good for keeping you energy up Naruto, without leaving much to throw up again. Now you will eat 1 or 2 of these, tomorrow morning, she ordered him. It wasn't a stern voice, just firm. Even so, the familiar tone was enough to stop any arguments on Naruto's part. Don't worry Naruto, they taste great and they're not vegetables. They're fruit. Tochi, who had been looking at his daughter's little outburst of care for Naruto, was smiling. He'd always been proud of his daughter, and this little scene showed one of the many reasons why. He decided that he needed to go by her example as well. Now supper on the other hand, drawing both teen and preteens' attention. Eat a lot before you go to bed. You'll digest better when you sleep. If you don't use too much energy before you go to bed tonight, you should feel less hungry when you wake up. Naruto was looking wide-eyed at Tsuchi and his daughter. They just told him to not take his new sensei's advice, and practically ordered him to eat before the test. If he hadn't trusted them completely, he would have thought that they were giving him bad advice. But as things would have it, he did trust them. He had nothing against eating a large supper, that part sounded rather pleasant. The oranges on the other hand he was less sure about. Even so, Ayam had told him to eat some of them before the test, and he would. If they left little to throw up again, then that teacher wouldn't have anything to scold him for. Oh, and Naruto Ayam chipped in. Don't stay up and practice tonight. Naruto was amazed. How do you know I plan to train? Ayam just shook her head lightly. You always stay up and train before something big, silly. You always have. Naruto didn't know what to say. He never really realized how much the ramen-making pair knew. It made him happy. He could still remember the dream about the white-haired man, but even if he told him that secrecy was a ninja's greatest weapon, it still felt really good to have someone knowing him. Thank you, he said in a weak but happy voice. He was getting a little overwhelmed by his own emotions. Ayam glanced over at him with a raised eyebrow, then with a smile she said, Don't worry about the oranges, Naruto, you can pay me back with a small favor. Naruto was a little taken aback at first, but then he realized that she was just trying to get his mind on a less sensitive subject. She peeked over her shoulder at her father, who was occupying himself, cutting vegetables. Then she leaned down towards Naruto, and whispered, I believe that you were about to say who you like, now that it is no longer Sakura. Who is she? What she asked made him choke on the broth. Ayam just smiled at him, much like her father had done before. The way she looked at him made him feel like she already knew, and just waited for him to admit it. But she couldn't know. He hadn't told anyone. Naruto could feel himself starting to panic. Not knowing another way to escape, Naruto hurriedly said his Gokususuma as fast as he politely could, and took off. He wasn't sure, but he thought he could hear feminine laughter as he ran away. As for why he was running, he told himself that it was to get ready for the next day, but truthfully, he just couldn't tell anyone yet. He wasn't ashamed of it, Kami forbid. He just didn't want to jinx it. As for leaving, he needed to go anyway. After all, he had a big day coming up. The paper said 6 or was it 7 tomorrow morning. I should have memorized it, as he made his way home. He needed to eat some more, and go to bed early. The oranges he got from Ayam were breakfast, no matter what that Kakashi said. And even if he get in trouble for it, he still believed Ayam Onizen and Tsuchiyajizen over some Jonin that couldn't even dodge an eraser, any day. Early morning. It was too early in Naruto's opinion. His head was still fuzzy when he arrived at the training ground, where they'd been instructed to meet up with their new sensei. He wanted to curse that particular sensei right now, as the note didn't specify exactly when they were to meet, so it forced him to get up bright and early, even if it was still dark, to avoid the risk of running late. He could only hope that he was on time. The night had passed without any dreams that he could remember, and for that he was rather thankful. It had been a relief with a good night's sleep, and a much-needed too, considering he had to get out of bed when the alarm rang. He tried to go to bed early, but had been kept up when he made the final preparation on his t-shirt. He had picked up a thicker thread on his way home, and had proceeded to stab himself to death with the needle as he worked. In the end, he managed to fasten the patch in place. You could hardly even see the stitches on the outside, and luckily, due to the dark color of the fabric, few of the bloodstains were visible. When he stumbled into the clearing, in the middle of the training ground, he noticed that his teammates were already there. Both of them looked about ready to drop. Sasuke seemed to have trouble keeping his eyes open, something that made his expression look even dumber than Shikamaru's on a test day. A little voice inside Naruto's head scolded him for not bringing a camera for this occasion. He would have loved to immortalize the image, showing that even the great Uchiha could be brought down a notch by such an ungodly early morning. Sakura was just as out of her element as Sasuke, maybe even more so. She wasn't seated more than a couple of feet from her crush, but there was no hint of her even registering the fact. She just sat there, making half an attempt to keep her eyes open and her mouth closed, whilst her head bobbed up and down, as she fought the sleep that threatened to take her. It was a bit scary to see them act so differently than normal, but then again, he was probably no different. He tried and failed to greet them, as the only sound he managed to make was the incomprehensive noise he made during a yawn. Sakura responded with a tired nod, as she probably wanted to avoid the contagious effect of his yawning. Sasuke didn't react at all. If Naruto hadn't known better, he would have thought that the genius didn't even register his presence. Naruto wasted little time standing upright. He was too tired for that. He just walked over and seated himself on the other side of Sakura and tried to stay awake a little while longer. After all, Kakashi would show up soon. He probably should be awake when he did. Taking a closer look at his teammates, he noticed how uncomfortable they both seemed to be. Sakura's stomach was complaining loudly about the advice to skip breakfast, but she seemed too tired to actually be embarrassed over it. Sasuke's stomach mirrored Sakura's reaction as angry growls came from him as well. Naruto, on the other hand, hadn't done as Kakashi had told them, and was somewhat better off because of it. Iam's oranges had done wonders, just like the late-night supper that Tucci had advised him to eat. He wasn't exactly stuffed, but he wasn't that hungry either, and that's what counted. After waiting for what seemed like forever, but probably was little more than 10 minutes, Naruto seriously started to question why they'd even bothered to get out of bed. He was just getting sleepier as the time passed, and not being particularly hungry made his brain think that it was just as well not to waste time being conscious. The other two didn't have the same problem. They were tired, sure, but it isn't easy to sleep on an empty stomach. When they registered snoring coming from Naruto, they could only watch on in envy. "We really need to work on that temper of yours," Jiraiya scolded Naruto as they stepped off one of the many ferries that transported travelers between Ozu Island and Tea Country. It had been a long and slow journey, and Naruto had gotten himself into several arguments on the way. He had it coming, Naruto grunted in response, not the least bit embarrassed over what he'd done. "It was his own fault, he pushed me first," Jiraiya sighed. It was true that the one Naruto talked about did in fact push him, and it was no accident. If he was to be perfectly frank, he'd been downright rude, but that was no reason to throw the man overboard. Fortunately, there'd been another boat coming in the opposite direction, and the very surprised and very drenched person was lucky enough to get a ride back to Ozu Island with it. "Even so, we're supposed to be keeping a low profile," Jiraiya reminded him. They'd discussed his temper before on several occasions, but that was a lesson that had yet to sink in. "Did you at least try to count to 10 like I told you to?" Naruto had the good grace to look embarrassed as he shook his head. The port where they had landed wasn't much to talk about. There were probably no more than 5 buildings in the area, and all of them had seen better days. The only building of note was a dirty-looking tavern that even he would think twice about entering. Not just because the hostess, who had the good grace to stand outside to greet any potential guests, was something out of his worst nightmare, but also because she was eyeing him hungrily. He was the pervert of perverts, and as such, he was attuned to the perversity of others. What his instinct, and sadly experience, told him about that kind of hostesses were that they were much more accurately described as hosts. So, like a man who knew a thing or two about possible dangers related to women sporting a 5-foot-old clock shadow, he proceeded to pull Naruto along the road leading away from the tavern and into the safety of the forest. It was night time, but anything was safer than in that tavern. When they were a sufficient distance away from the buildings, Naruto spoke. "It's just that I don't know, I just get angry so fast." Jiraiya was glad for Naruto's lack of protest on the matter with the tavern. Some lessons seemed to be absorbed faster than others. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I know, that's why we're working on it," he reassured him. After a short pause he added, "Besides, it was funny to see that bastard realize he was pushing a shinobi. I don't think I have ever seen anyone go from being the bully to becoming the victim that fast, and I have been a ninja longer than most." Naruto couldn't help but smile at the memory. It had been rather funny. He turned his head and looked up at his teacher. "Yeah, you are very old." Jiraiya gave Naruto a fake expression of shock. "What? Me? Old?" he asked in an overdramatized voice. "I'm shocked. I'll tell you now, I am in my prime. Young people today have no respect for their elders." It was hard to keep from laughing, and Naruto failed utterly. The two of them laughed until they lost sight of the building among the trees. When they calmed down a little, Jiraiya tried again. "You remember why it's important not to get agitated when you're fighting, right?" he asked in a light tone. The 14-year-old boy nodded, but kept his eyes on the ground. Jiraiya sighed. "Well, I'm going to tell you anyway, who knows, maybe it'll stick this time." He heard Naruto snort in response to the bad joke, but that only meant that he was listening. "When you get angry, you stop thinking straight. You're not alone in doing that, but it is still bad. Think about what would have happened if people acted purely on what their emotions told them." Naruto looked at him with a raised eyebrow. He didn't understand. Jiraiya didn't blame him for it. Take a hidden village as an example. If the majority of the village was to decide what it should do, then anger would probably be the most decisive factor. Jiraiya began. He knew it was probably too late for this sort of lecture, but maybe he'd get lucky, and it would make sense to the boy. People love different things than other people, their own family, their own friends, and so on. Sadly, people often hate the same things, which is often something that has wronged them before. Most Konoha shinobi doesn't like Iwanin. Due to the last war, the same goes for Iwagakure towards Konoha. That would leave us constantly at war. Jiraiya risked a glance down towards the boy. To his surprise, he was actually paying attention. Now, let us take an example from something closer to us. Let's say diplomats. If diplomats were to say exactly what they felt or meant, they wouldn't get anywhere. That would mean politics would go out the window like an old rag. Another glance at Naruto showed that he was losing interest. Jiraiya silently cursed himself for going with the diplomats. He needed to change tactics. Okay, another example. I think you would want to hear this one. It is about traders, more specifically, ramen merchants. Now the boy was all ears. The words ramen was like a large billboard, with flashing colors to get Naruto's attention. Merchants need to think about profit and loss more than anyone. They know they need to spend money to make money. You remember that weasel from Wave? Naruto thought it over and nodded. To Jiraiya, it was clear that Naruto was getting tired. Jiraiya hadn't met the man Gato, but Kakashi's report gave a good description. Much better than the copy Nin's personality would indicate. He wasn't a proper trader. Every merchant was probably seething with anger after meeting him, they just couldn't do anything about it. They were probably out of options when they dealt with him. In any other situation they would have tried to find a better deal. Jiraiya could hear from his own example that he too was getting tired. He was messing up his own arguments. He needed to wrap it up, and try to present the point better. What it comes down to is this: instead of getting angry, try to find another way out, another deal, so to speak. He tried. Naruto's eyes were all questions, and his expression could indicate that Jiraiya had grown a second head. Another deal? The Gama-sennin rubbed the bridge of his nose before answering. I mean another way to deal with the anger. You know, shrug it off. Answer back. Best to do that childishly in your case. It was one of the rare occasions when Naruto was too tired to argue, so he accepted it. Answer back? Yes, I know you're not good at that. But even the weakest retaliation, delivered with confidence, can be enough to put your opponent off. That made sense, Naruto supposed. Not the weak retaliation part, but confidence. Confidence was the answer to everything. Naruto had a lot of confidence. I promise that you'll do much better if you keep your temper under control, Jiraiya finished. It was late, so it was little use prolonging the lecture more than necessary. Let's just find a place to sleep, we'll talk more about it in the morning. After a lengthy pause, where they didn't talk, Jiraiya added, just one more thing, Naruto. I think you should wake up. What? What do you mean wake up? Naruto asked, confused. Wasn't it time to go to sleep? Jiraiya shook his head. I said, get up. Baka! Was the words that greeted Naruto when he joined the land of the living. Sakura had added a kick when she woke him, but that was not unusual. Sakura may be cute, but she was also violent, and his endeavor to get a date with her had left him painfully aware of the fact. Kakashi was approaching them with some type of alarm clock when Naruto seated himself upright. The sun was halfway up on the sky, and the dim light he'd arrived in was nowhere to be seen. Sakura was angry for some reason that was unknown to him. At least it was unknown until she shouted, "You're late!" at their approaching teacher. Sorry, Kakashi began. I'm late because my alarm clock broke, so I had to buy a new one, he answered with what could easily have been a smile on his face. It was hard to tell with the mask. He's late? Naruto thought to himself, as he rubbed the sleep from his eyes. He was brutally introduced to total consciousness when he heard Sakura shout and angrily at the Jonin, liar. To Naruto, it was like nails on a blackboard. Kakashi's voice held no trace of anger or irritation when he replied, Nope, and here it is. He held up the clock so they could see. He then turned sharply on his heels and started to walk away. Follow me please, he ordered them over his shoulder. He led the three of them into a clearing, where 3 training posts were embedded into the ground. There were 1 or 2 at the academy, and they had been used to build up striking force in taijutsu. It was essentially just a tree stump, but they worked just fine for training target and punching bags, as they hardly ever hit back. A short distance away stood a square-shaped rock, which seemed to have writing on it. The ground around it was paved, and there was a flagpole a few feet away. It looked important. Kakashi walked over to the poles and placed the clock on top of the one in the center. I've set this alarm to go off at noon, he informed them whilst activating the alarm. Naruto noted that the clock was actually 10 past 11. He'd been asleep for nearly 5 hours. Is the time right? He interrupted before Kakashi could continue. Kakashi made a show of bending down to look at the clock before answering. Yes, it is, he said with a friendly smile. We got here over 5 hours ago. Naruto nearly shouted back at him. Kakashi didn't even flinch. He just raised his eyebrow and asked, and, you're late? Naruto resorted. Silence followed. Sasuke and Sakura looked at him as if he was stupid, as did Kakashi. In the end, Sakura just hit him on the head, Baka. After a few seconds without answering, Kakashi took out 2 bells and held them out for them to see. I have here 2 bells, he started. Your challenge is to steal these from me before the timer sounds. It was strange to note that Kakashi seemed to become even happier when he said, anyone who fails to get a bell doesn't get any lunch. Instead, you'll be tied to that tree stump, so I can eat your lunch in front of you. The statement was followed by a series of growling stomachs, as if they'd been waiting for a cue. All you need is just 1 bell apiece. But since there aren't enough to go around, one of you is definitively headed for the stump. Kakashi made the bells jingle to make the point. What was said next, however, instantly raised attention. And whoever fails this test will no longer hold the rank of Genin. One of you is on your way back to school in disgrace. He said the last part with a glare. The effect was very intimidating. Naruto was sure that, if he had moved, either Sakura or Sasuke would jump. For that matter, had any of them moved, he would probably jump as well. He could almost feel the pressure in the air. Kakashi snatched the bells into his fist, and his expression changed instantly back to the bored look with his eye only halfway open. You may, if you choose, use shuriken. Attack as though you mean to kill or you'll never stand a chance. Sakura was the first to comment. But that's so dangerous, she said, worry clearly written on her face. Naruto agreed. To use shuriken was never allowed in the academy, for everyone's safety. You couldn't even dodge an eraser," he proclaimed nervously. "You're going to get yourself killed." Kakashi just sighed, and looked even less interested than before. "It's always the weakest that shout the loudest." Then he turned to the other two. "Now let's ignore the loud one, and you'll start on my signal." The familiar twig of anger shot through Naruto. He hated being underestimated. People always underestimated him. He wanted to draw a kunai, just to show how dangerous he could really be. His fingers itched, but something just wasn't right. Instantly he remembered the dream. It had been one of those with the old pervert. He realized that he'd gotten angry really fast, and it had only been one comment. This was one of the first times Naruto had ever thought about how easily he would get angry. It was a scary realization to see how little it actually took. With a sudden insight, he realized that it was because he was a shinobi. He would never get angry like that before. He was less willing to take any crap now that he had a title than when he didn't. It made him embarrassed when he thought about it. He actually thought people would instantly respect him, just for being a genin. He remembered what the white-haired figment of his imagination had said. He should answer back. It took him less than a second to come up with a response. The time used reflected itself in the quality of the answer. "No, it isn't." Kakashi stopped himself from giving the signal to start, and just stared at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "Isn't what?" "It's not just the weak that are loud," Naruto answered with confidence. It was probably the most childish way to deal with it, but at least he wasn't angry anymore. "Yes, they are," Kakashi responded after a few seconds. "No, they're not," Naruto answered back. "Yes, they are," Kakashi replied just as calmly as before, but Naruto could have sworn he heard a little suppressed laughter in his voice. Kakashi then made a show of looking at the clock. "You still only have until noon, no matter when we start," he pointed out. "But you're still wrong," Naruto continued, oblivious to Sasuke and Sakura's growing irritation. "Shut up, Naruto," he said. "We only have until noon," Sakura scolded as she again hit him on the head again. Kakashi just smiled at the display and said, "Go." When Kakashi gave the signal, Naruto darted out of the clearing as fast as he could. He grabbed onto a tree as he shot past, so he swung to a sudden halt behind it, effectively hiding himself from view. He needed a bell. He couldn't fail now, not after passing the genin exams for the first time. What he really needed, though, was a plan. He could see that Kakashi hadn't moved at all. He was just standing there looking bored. It was actually rather infuriating that he acted in such a way, but Naruto fought the frustration back. The perverted figment of his imagination had helped him before, so it was probably best to heed what it had said. Naruto had actually worked it out the night before. The dreams about the old man, it was his own genius talking to him. After all, he'd never seen anyone like that in his life. The imaginary figure was smart and gave good advice, pointed out things he needed to work on and so forth. In short, Naruto was a genius. The only strange thing about it was that the genius was the same part that was perverted and old. Even so, the thought of him being an actual genius brought on a boost of confidence, and with it, a half-formed plan. For it to work, however, he needed to move fast. Without a second thought, he formed the ram seal and made 4 shadow clones. It wasn't as many as he could have made, but it was enough for what he had in mind. They all roughly knew the plan, so they wasted no time standing around. All the clones and Naruto darted off to fulfill their part of the plan, and hopefully, the dead last position would work to his advantage. Kakashi had just given the signal for the test to start, and was pleased to see that all of his potential students did what they'd been trained to do. Even so, this was just the beginning, and his test wasn't about what they were trained to do, it was about what they hadn't trained to do. Kakashi didn't believe in the grading system. Just as he was about to take out his beloved book, the loud one of his genin came back out into the clearing. He was making enough noise to wake the dead, not a shinobi approach at all. "It is common for shinobi to conceal their presence, you know," he informed the boy in a deliberately bored voice. "I don't need to hide from someone like you," Naruto proclaimed loudly. "I'll kick your ass and show you what an awesome ninja I am." Kakashi didn't know if he should be laughing at Naruto's words, or cry at the apparent lack of any useful training. Suddenly feeling a bit empty, he decided to see just how bad it really was, starting with his temper. "Okay, come at me then, I will teach you about the first of the shinobi arts. Taijutsu," he said flatly, as he moved his hand to his equipment pouch, enjoying the sight of Naruto tensing. When he revealed the little orange book, Naruto's expression turned into pure disbelief. Fighting himself not to laugh, Kakashi proceeded to taunt the boy a bit more. He made a show of opening the book and started to read. After a few seconds he looked up. "Is something wrong? I thought you were going to attack me." "But you I mean why are you? That's a book." Naruto stuttered, clearly not sure what he should do. "Of course it's a book. I've been dying to find out how it ends," Kakashi replied whilst turning some pages, making it seem as if he was reading. "Carry on, it shouldn't make any difference to the outcome, considering who I'm up against." At first Naruto just stood there, staring at the white-haired Jonin with an unreadable expression. Then he exploded. "I'm going to beat you to a pulp!" Naruto roared as he charged forward, all thoughts of plans and scheming forgotten. Naruto leapt into the air, intending to feint a strike to the Jonin's face. No sooner than leaving the ground, he knew something was wrong. He twisted his lower body, so it would seem like he intended to kick, but the whole movement was off. The worst part was that he really had no time to think about it, as he was already in motion. Without stopping his spin, he lashed out with his fist towards Kakashi's face. The attack was easily blocked, but Naruto wasn't done. He used the force of his own attack to twist around in midair, trying to follow up with a sideways spinning kick. The very same he had feinted a moment before. As with the first attack, he instantly knew it wasn't good enough. Kakashi dodged easily, just by bending his knees faster than Naruto was able to rotate. His attacks were just too slow. He couldn't stop, however, as that would only open more room for counterattack than he already had. With a last effort to land a hit on the tall shinobi, he settled for a simple strike propelled by the same rotation caused by the kick which hit nothing but air. From behind him, he heard Kakashi's voice say, "Showing your back so many times in a fight is not good at all." He also suddenly heard Sakura shout from the bushes on his left in an alarmed voice, "Naruto! Get out of there! You'll be killed." It just had time to register before he again heard Kakashi, too late. A glance over his shoulder made chills shoot up his spine. There was something dreadfully familiar about the situation. Something that went deeper than anything he could explain. Pure terror shook him as he heard Kakashi's next words: "Konohagakure no Sato's most secret and most sacred taijutsu technique. Senin Goroshi." The words were followed by a sensation of horrible wrongness and utter despair, and then Naruto dissolved into a cloud of smoke. From the bushes, Naruto had a good view of what Kakashi had done. It was some sort of horrible torture technique, he was sure of it. It was so horrible that he could almost feel it from where he stood. He'd hoped that the clone would last longer than it did, but it had gotten angry and just rushed in like a madman. It reminded him of what his genius dream had said. It was no good getting angry over something like that. After all, if the teacher was reading a book, it would only mean that he had one hand busy, and wouldn't be able to fight as effectively as if he had both hands free. Still, that teacher was really something else. He'd managed to fight the clone with just one arm. That was seriously good taijutsu. The worst part was that he'd done it all while reading that book of his. The book was the key. The original plan had been to navigate Kakashi closer to Naruto's location, closer than he was at the moment anyway, and attack from two different angles at the same time with another clone that was close by. Now that that plan was out, the book would have to suffice. Naruto darted out from hiding, sprinting towards Kakashi's back. When the clone dissolved into a cloud of smoke, Kakashi was baffled. Kage Bunshin, he thought. It had to be the technique he learned from the Forbidden Scroll, the technique the boy used to defeat the traitor Mizuki. Kakashi was also silently impressed. Using clones to test out the enemy was a tactic that even Jonin used when it was necessary. The taijutsu that the clone had used, however, was not much to brag about. There'd been several times where the boy could have been disabled without much difficulty. He knew that in a second or two, he would see if it really was all the boy had to fend with. He spun around and blocked high with his left hand, as Naruto tried to deliver a drop kick aimed at his shoulder. As he blocked high, Naruto would be out of balance for a follow-up. The boy was in no position to attack again before reaching the ground, as he was out of reach. Kakashi expected Naruto to drop towards the ground to follow up with more attacks, but was surprised when he felt Naruto's weight pressing down on his blocking arm. Naruto was using his own momentum, combined with whatever leverage he got from the block, to go up, over Kakashi, kicking with the other foot downwards, towards his head. He blocked the kick easily with his right elbow, whilst grabbing Naruto's other leg with the same arm. It was at that moment that Kakashi noticed not one, but two mistakes on his part. The first, and probably greatest mistake, was that he was holding his book with his left hand, open, content pointing upwards, where they could easily be read by a minor. The second mistake was that his left hand, which his beloved book occupied, would be unable to get a good hold of anything without dropping the content, risking damage to the signed work of art. If that wasn't enough, Naruto proceeded to fold his legs, trying to get a hold of Kakashi's arms, which Naruto was currently using as a floor. Naruto's attempts to trap his arms made Kakashi aware of a body moving at high speed towards his back. For half a second he thought that it could have been Sasuke or Sakura that came to help the blonde, but they were still concealing themselves in the trees. No, it was another Kage Bunshin. One clone was distracting him, occupying his arms and his focus, prohibiting him from using any jutsu, as another went for the bell. The boy's plan was coming together. A kunai was thrown out of some nearby bushes at high speed, aimed at his head. Kakashi instantly knew it was not meant to kill. It was a deadly weapon, true, but it was thrown from his right side, so it wasn't in what people considered his blind spot. It was another diversion, probably intended to keeping his attention away from the second attacker, whom from the sound of it had gone airborne. This was a bad situation for Kakashi, especially if the lesson was to sink in. With speed and force that he previously had no intention to use against the Genin, he broke the hold that Naruto had on his arms and flung him away. The second Naruto connected forcefully with the back of Kakashi's knees. Kakashi, however, had been able to weave the seals for a Kawarimi no Jutsu, so Naruto only hit the lower end of the log that Kakashi swapped place with, tipping that end upwards. The result of this action was that the upper end came tipping down, connecting not too gently with the attacking Naruto's head. In hiding, Kakashi allowed himself to breath. That was unexpected. Naruto was supposed to be dead last in his class, with no real natural talent. Now, however, Kakashi was in doubt. True, both his form and technical abilities wasn't very good, but to use such an advanced technique to gain the tactical advantage that early was something that one would only expect from an experienced fighter. If he were to judge, he would have thought that the first clone was most likely intended to herd him into a trap, as the second had to move in the open longer than what was advisable. Even so, it had played a key role for the trap to work. It occupied his attention and his arms, and after a second thought, Kakashi realized that it was probably supposed to act as a weight when the third would kick the back of his knees, effectively folding Kakashi backwards. The third Naruto seemed to be the real one, as he was still cursing angrily under his breath and holding his head where the log had hit him. The only thing Kakashi could fault him for was that the boy was louder than Guy and needed to work on his taijutsu. Naruto managed to push him into a corner, but that was mostly because Kakashi wanted to see what he would do. The boy's attacks in general was a bit weak, and his movements was unsure and hesitant, as if he wanted to do two things at once. If this team against all odds were to pass, he would have to do some work on it. About the overall effort, Kakashi could only say that it was a clear team effort. Too bad, Naruto's team consisted entirely of himself. If Sakura and or Sasuke had joined him, Kakashi would happily have allowed them to get a hold of one of the bells. As it was, however, Naruto would learn nothing if he was able to get one by himself. The encounter had also taught Kakashi something useful. He was not going to underestimate the other two like he had Naruto. Naruto was not happy about the outcome. It hadn't been enough, not enough at all. It was unfair how strong this new sensei seemed to be. How on earth were they supposed to beat someone like that? He made haste getting out of the clearing. He needed to get into cover to plan his next move. When he got clear, he hid himself among the branches of a nearby tree. What should he do? He had enough chakra to create several more clones, but somehow he felt that numbers would do him little good against the Jonin. Maybe he could lure the white-haired man to chase him into a trap? Thinking back on how the man had acted during their encounter, he dismissed the idea. The objective was for them to get a bell, not for him to fight them. Why would he make it so that only two people could pass anyway? It just seemed like an idiotic idea to Naruto. It was clear that they couldn't fight someone like that on their own, so it made little sense to split them up like this. Then again, Kakashi did start to read a book right before he fought Naruto, not exactly sensible behavior. He started to wonder if he should try to team up with someone when it happened. From somewhere to the east he heard a scream. It was a girl's scream, so it had to be Sakura. Without even thinking about how much he exposed himself, Naruto made his way towards the scream as fast as he could manage. Had the bastard Jonin hurt her? He wouldn't do that, would he? It didn't take him long to locate her, and she looked horrible. Her face was contracted in an expression of pure terror. Foam was coming from her mouth, and she was pale as a ghost. What the hell happened to her? Sakura? He tried carefully. There was no response. Sakura? He tried again, shaking her gently by the shoulder. As before, there came no answer. What should I do? What is wrong with her? From his hiding place in a nearby tree, Kakashi observed Naruto's attempt to wake the girl. He had no idea how such a simple genjutsu could affect her as strongly as it apparently did. But now that he observed at least one of his temporary charges taking priority of a teammate over the objective, he allowed himself to hope. There was the off chance that Naruto had figured out the meaning of the test, but studying the little scene below assured him that wasn't the case. Naruto was genuinely concerned over the state Sakura was in. Now if only he could get the others to work with him to get a bell. That would enable them to pass the test, and actually becoming a team. Looking at the sun, Kakashi decided that it was time to find the last member of the team. Sasuke needed to be given a chance as well. He was the top of his class after all. There had been some shuriken that he threw earlier, but that had been easily avoided. And even if Sakura had been easy to trap, Kakashi would not underestimate Sasuke. Making his way back towards the start point, he found the boy hidden in a tree. Sasuke hadn't seen him yet, but that was about to change. Kakashi moved himself, so as to appear to just be strolling along a path beneath the tree. He had his book out, but wasn't paying attention to the content, as he'd done with Naruto. Sasuke needed to learn, just like the others. From the corner of his eye, and from the boy's scent, he kept close attention to Sasuke's movements. The boy moved quickly from one area to another, probably setting some traps. That was a clever idea, but hardly educational. Kakashi hid himself and made a couple of shadow clones and sent them, unnoticed by Sasuke, to disable the traps. Then he was back in the open as if nothing had happened. It took less than 5 seconds for the clones to disarm the traps. Both traps were designed to toss kunai at 2 different locations, indicating that he wanted to move Kakashi away from those areas. Rookie number 1 would be in for a little surprise when he decided to strike. It didn't take long before several shuriken was hurled out from Sasuke's hiding place. Kakashi didn't even bother to use a kawarimi. He just turned himself out of the way, all the time keeping his nose buried in the book. Kakashi had to smile at the noticeable lack of action in the seconds that followed. It would seem that Sasuke still had a little to learn about how to deal with unexpected turn of events. After a couple more seconds, Sasuke walked out of hiding, with a dark scowl plastered on his face. Kakashi would probably have found the expression a bit more intimidating if it hadn't come from a 12-year-old boy. Kakashi lowered the book and peered over the top. He made sure that the look he gave Sasuke was portraying boredom, as to make the boy even more annoyed than he already seemed to be. I was wondering when you would show up, Kakashi said, lowering the book enough to show his whole face. I'm not like the other two, the boy stated as he walked closer. Sasuke had a body language that told Kakashi that he would underestimate anyone. It told the world that he was the superior no matter who he was facing. The way he acted superior was at some level designed to make his enemies mad. It had been a clan trait, probably worked most of the time too. At the moment, he was almost daring Kakashi to lower the book and in doing so, encouraging him to keep reading in defiance. Kakashi decided that he would abide to the boy's body language and see how it would go. That is a lot of talk, now let us see if there is anything to it, shall we? He replied while putting the book away. Not one muscle in Sasuke's face moved. Kakashi had to credit the boy for keeping his true feelings hidden as well as he did. Only experience told Kakashi what the boy was about to do next. Sasuke shot forward with good speed for a Genin. As he leapt into the air, Kakashi deducted what the genius wanted to do. The angle of the attack was not good for a convenient attack intended to harm. A high kick aimed at his side would force Kakashi to block high, making it easy to grab the foot with the other arm, occupying both of them. Kakashi had no more time to think as the boy was too close, but whatever his plan was, Kakashi would make sure that it failed. With sudden increase of speed, he grabbed the boy's leg before it connected, and used Sasuke's momentum combined with his own to throw the boy along the direction he had jumped. Sasuke tumbled on the ground but managed to recover quickly. He shot to his feet and immediately started weaving seals. Kakashi noted the combination and his eye widened in recognition. Is the boy able to use such an advanced jutsu at that age? He hurriedly weaved his own hand seal combination for a Doton jutsu. Kakashi finished before Sasuke, and dropped into the ground as the earth liquefied beneath his feet like water. But even underground he felt the soaring heat of the jutsu Sasuke unleashed. No wonder he was the Rookie of the Year, if he had learned that kind of jutsu at such a young age. It usually took years of practice to be able to use elemental techniques, and would require that you, at the very least, had someone to teach you how it should be done. That would mean that Sasuke had learned it when his family was still alive years ago. No wonder he considered a genius. Now was not the time to dwell on such things, however, as the boy needed to be taught why he was better off when he had help than on his own. Kakashi shifted his location so he was directly under the boy, and proceeded to grab his leg and pulled him under in the same movement as he got out. As Kakashi left the ground, the earth solidified, trapping Sasuke's body from the neck down. Kakashi kneeled in front of the trapped Genin, mostly just to annoy him. Much talk, but not much to show for it, he teased. Sasuke didn't respond verbally, he just continued to glare. The third shinobi way ninjutsu, Kakashi said to no one in particular before looking down at Sasuke. That was an impressive jutsu, so you were right about not being like the others, they could at least use their techniques effectively. Now he was just teasing. Sasuke's jutsu was in a completely different league than anything his teammates would be able to dish out. Naruto's Kage Bunshin was just impressive in the amount of chakra it took to produce them. Sasuke's combined amount with manipulation, to the extent that most Chunin wouldn't be able to do anything like what Sasuke just did. Sasuke didn't respond this time either, but his scowl deepened at the insult. Not having anything to do with his remaining time, Kakashi just stood up and left for the clearing with the training poles and the memorial stone. From over his shoulder he heard Sasuke curse angrily under his breath. As he walked away, he thought about the Genin's individual performances. He would say that Naruto was the one that did best, even if his taijutsu form was lacking. The reason he'd done so well was Kakashi's own slip. Naruto had caught him off guard with an attack that should have been leagues above his abilities. His use of Kage Bunshin also wasn't lost on Kakashi. He worked them as a team, doing different tasks directed at one goal, just the thing Kakashi was looking for if only he would include the rest of the real team. Sakura had been the most disappointing of them all. She just run back and forth, trying to find Sasuke. It had been ridiculously easy to trap her in a simple genjutsu that had knocked her out right away. What was most surprising was the fact that the illusion was designed to create panic, not to knock people out. The Rookie of the Year wasn't disappointing at all. He'd planned ahead, and would probably have succeeded in leading him into a trap if he hadn't disabled them. The boy had the skills, there was no denying that. The katan he used also showed how advanced his chakra was developed, and hinted at a potential that was largely untapped. The last Uchiha still had a lot to learn about surprises though. He didn't seem to handle planned deviations as well as one could have hoped. Still, they all lacked the basic skill that this test was designed for. None of them resorted to real teamwork. He would give Naruto a point on the fact that he rushed back to Sakura when he heard her scream. That was a trait that should be in place with every shinobi, but it was far from enough. Thinking it over, he took off in the direction he had left her. No harm observing them during the remaining time. He found Naruto there, still trying to wake the girl. Kakashi noted that Naruto had no clue what he was doing, so it appeared that his ninja talent wasn't only lacking in taijutsu. What was interesting to note, however, was that he seemed to have completely forgotten about the mission to get a bell and was now fully occupied with Sakura's well-being. After a moment or two, Sakura started to stir. She got up in a sitting position so fast that she actually knocked Naruto over with her head. She then started looking around, not really seeing anything, muttering, "Sasuke-kun?" Sasuke-kun! Over and over, as if she expected him to be there. She was in shock. Naruto seated himself upright and rubbed his forehead where Sakura had headbutted him. That hurt Sakura-chan, he whined, but her expression was enough to shatter any annoyance on his part. He was genuinely worried when she didn't wake up no matter how much he tried to wake her. He had thought her paralyzed or maybe even worse. Now Sakura's eyes seemed to search for something, but she didn't even noticing him. She kept asking, "Where is Sasuke-kun?" in a small voice. The question wasn't directed at him, but seemingly to the world in general. It was as if she was asking herself, searching for an answer she didn't know. He recognized it from one of Iruka-sensei's lectures. Sakura was in shock. "Sakura-chan?" He tried carefully. She didn't respond more than to turn her head a little in his direction. Her eyes, however, didn't focusing on him. "Sakura-chan?" He tried again in a softer voice that came out a little hoarsely. This time she did respond, but not to his words. She suddenly just got to her feet and started to frantically look around, repeating "Sasuke-kun?" over and over. When she suddenly took off, Naruto scrambled to his feet and ran after her. He managed to follow but had to work to keep up. "Sakura-chan, wait!" he shouted. This time, he got an answer. "We have to find Sasuke-kun." She yelled back almost desperately. "Why? What happened?" he shouted back. He wondered if it could have something to do with why she had been out cold. He had no time for more musing, because just as Sakura entered a clearing, she suddenly froze in mid-step. She went white as a ghost, then she screamed and fainted. Worried, he darted over to protect his unconscious teammate. What he saw, however, made him blink in surprise, and then he lost his breath to hysterical laughter. Sasuke was there, buried to his neck in the ground. He had no idea why Sakura fainted and felt a bit guilty about not helping her right away, but the sight was just too much. "Stop laughing, you idiot!" shouted the buried Sasuke, who didn't find the situation that funny at all, and seeing Naruto bent over laughing just made it more humiliating. When Sasuke resumed his effort to try and dig himself out, Naruto regained his self-control and moved to help him, chuckling as he did. Sasuke only huffed when Naruto started to dig him out. Sasuke was too proud to actually ask for help, but wasn't about to refuse. When he finally was free, he didn't even thank Naruto for the help. He just moved over to Sakura and proceeded to wake her up. He didn't have to put much effort in it. He only kneeled by her side and said her name, Sakura. He had much more success than Naruto did, and she came to in a few seconds. The first thing she did was to hug Sasuke fiercely and start to cry. "You're alive!" she managed to shout in between sobs. Naruto rushed over, worried again. "Sakura-chan. What's wrong?" He tried, but she didn't answer. She had buried her face in Sasuke's neck, making the fabric damp with her tears. Sasuke, on the other hand, wasn't that worried, and he just shook her off. It took some work, but he managed to pry her off him when she calmed down a bit. "I thought you were hurt," she tried to explain, still crying. "Well, I'm not," Sasuke answered back as he got to his feet. "Yeah, but I saw you had so many Keikunai ans shuriken and Yu." She calmed down and got her voice under control again. "I thought you were hurt," was all she managed as way of explanation, voice still weak. Naruto got a lump in his throat when he heard how much Sakura cared. She had really believed that Sasuke was hurt, and it had hurt her feelings really badly. A stray thought of Sasuke and Sakura as a happy couple entered his mind. For some reason, he thought they would make a good match. There was a brief moment where the world got a little out of focus, and he had to stifle a yawn. It would seem he was a bit tired still. Sasuke's sigh brought him back in the moment. Sasuke looked up at the sun. "Time's running out. It's almost noon." He turned towards the other two before he started to walk away. "I'm off." Naruto was about to give a rude comment, but Sakura interrupted him. "Sasuke-kun, do you honestly believe you can get one of those bells?" Naruto wasn't sure, but he thought that he detected a little bit of desperation in Sakura's voice. Sasuke just grunted as way of response and continued walking. Sakura continued her rant, somewhat more desperately. I mean, there's no more time, and even if we couldn't manage it this time, I'm sure, next time if we give it our all." Sasuke cut her off with one of the nastiest glares Naruto had ever seen him make. Sakura, whom the glare was intended, looked like she'd been struck, then she just dropped her head in defeat. Sasuke turned to leave again, but after a few steps he stopped and lingered. His back was against them, so they couldn't see his face. "Only I can kill him," he stated. His voice was low and held no determination. It was as if he were confessing something. Naruto wasn't sure what to do. It was like he was intruding on a conversation he wasn't meant to hear. Sakura looked up again, suddenly very nervous. Naruto knew how she felt. He was afraid to move, and remind them that he actually was there. "Who? Do you mean Kakashi-sensei?" Sakura asked, perplexed, very carefully, so not to disturb the Uchiha's train of thought. Sasuke didn't visibly react, he only continued to talk. "He made me cry." Naruto wasn't sure what to think about that. He didn't see the great harm in crying. Sure, it was a waste of time, but not serious enough to kill over. He himself had cried on several occasions, usually when he was very happy. Neither did Sakura seem all that sure after Sasuke's statement. She resorted to repeating what Sasuke had said, forming it into a question. "You cried?" This was starting to get ridiculous, Naruto thought. He was actually starting to become scared by the scene. What would they do if he interrupted? Would they get angry? Embarrassed? With slow motions, he tried to walk away from the two, who didn't seem to notice him anymore. As he moved further away, he heard Sasuke mutter something under his breath, too low to make out any real words. Sakura, on the other hand, was a little louder. What are you talking about? What he heard next chilled him to the bone for some reason he didn't fully understand. My only goal is to have my revenge. I have to become stronger than he is now, he heard Sasuke say with determination. Something clicked in Naruto's head. Something was very wrong, like towers of cards just came crashing down all around him, and he had no idea why. Sasuke's words were very egocentric and disturbing, true, but it was more than that. It was as if the words somehow represented a deep-down fear, making Naruto's stomach contract painfully and he felt physically ill. He didn't know exactly why, but he needed Sasuke to stop talking about whatever he was talking about, killing his brother. Avenger. He just needed him to stop. Without thinking, he stormed back into the clearing. Sasuke. Listen to me. Don't think like that. Please, just don't think like that. He pleaded. He just needed Sasuke to stop. Before Sasuke had time to answer or look at him for that matter, the bell signaled the end of the exercise. Sasuke looked in the direction of the sound, and Naruto heard him say, "Crap. I should have saved my breath." Then he just walked away towards the sound. Sakura didn't say anything. She just sighed heavily and followed Sasuke's lead. Naruto realized that his hands were trembling and his t-shirt felt damp with cold sweat. It wasn't from cooped up energy or anger, but out of fear. He was genuinely afraid of what Sasuke had talked about. The bell felt like a blessing, as it had effectively stopped Sasuke from talking about whatever it was he was talking about. With a deep breath, he started to jog after his two teammates, trying intently to forget the horrible feeling he just felt. "Hey guys. Wait up," he shouted, but neither of them bothered to answer. It was getting irritating to be ignored, but the irritation also washed away any lingering fear, so he stuck with it. If they didn't want to talk, he wouldn't talk to them either. As the silence stretched on, his thoughts involuntarily drifted back to what Sasuke had said. It was strange to realize that he didn't know the reason why he reacted like he did. It had just felt so horrible wrong when Sasuke talked like that. It was a bit like yesterday on the school roof, only 100 times worse. Maybe the Hokage would know what was wrong. After all, the old geezer knew about everything. When the trio walked into the clearing with the 3 training posts, they found it empty. There were a couple of bento boxes by the stone that hadn't been there before when the test started, but no Kakashi. Without saying a word, Sasuke walked over to the poles. In no hurry to talk, Sakura just followed him in silence. Refusing to be the first to break the silence, Naruto shuffled after her, grumbling as he did. You're all here," they heard Kakashi say when they were halfway to their destination. All of them turned towards the masked Jonin, who was now standing by the stone, but Sakura looked unsure about something. "What do you mean, all here? I can't see Naruto anywhere," she replied. Naruto found her words downright hurtful. "Hey! I'm right here, you know," he replied angrily over his shoulder. Sasuke didn't say a word, but raised an eyebrow. Kakashi, on the other hand, just shook his head. "I'm very disappointed in all of you. Naruto is here, in fact, he's been with you for a while now." Naruto nodded sagely and pumped his chest. "Damn right I have." Sakura and Sasuke just looked at the white-haired Jonin. After a couple of seconds, Sasuke muttered, "Genjutsu." Sakura immediately started weaving hand seals. Kai. The world around Naruto started to wobble a bit, but nothing more happened as far as Naruto was concerned. For Sasuke and Sakura, however, Naruto melted into existence a few feet away. "What were you doing, Naruto? Why didn't you end the Genjutsu when the bell rang?" Sakura scolded. Naruto, however, didn't even know what she was talking about. "What do you mean? What Genjutsu?" he resorted irritably. This was getting ridiculous. Kakashi sighed. "And you two didn't even notice when he disappeared," he said in a disappointed voice. Turning towards Naruto, he added, "More surprisingly, however, is that Naruto here didn't seem to notice anything at all." "Didn't notice what?" Naruto asked, still confused. He had lost track of what was going on. Sasuke's scowl deepened. "You cast the jutsu," he accused. "Why?" Kakashi smiled back at him, "To see if you would notice." "You cast a jutsu on me?" Naruto demanded, outraged. He received a slap on the back of his head from Sakura. She was getting tired of Naruto's stupidity. "Shut up and listen, Baka." "Yes, I did," Kakashi replied, unfazed by Naruto's outburst. 5 minutes later, Naruto found himself tied to the pole in the middle. Sakura and Sasuke were seated on either side of him, not looking happy at all. Kakashi stood a few feet away, not looking all that pleased himself. Then again, he didn't look disappointed either. The silence was only broken by the genin's growling stomach. Even Naruto joined, as his makeshift breakfast hadn't filled him up, just like I am warned him it wouldn't. "Well, listen to the little stomach's growl," Kakashi began. "By the way, you three, I have an announcement about this exercise." No one interrupted him. They just continued to announce their hunger without words. "None of you need worry any more about being sent back to the academy," he told them with a smile. Naruto felt the edges of his mouth being drawn upwards into a smile. "They'd passed?" He told them they had passed, We don't need to. It means all three of us. Naruto tried, but was too excited to say anything right. Kakashi interrupted him before he managed to correct what he said or add anything more. Are hopeless. More schooling would be pointless. The Jonin didn't move a muscle. He just stood there smiling, with his hands in his pockets. As the excitement died down, he added, "None of you will ever be shinobi." No one said anything at first. Naruto was so shocked that he couldn't even protest. Kakashi lost his easygoing attitude and looked much more serious as he glared at them. "Give it up. None of you will ever be a ninja." Somehow, to Naruto, this wasn't as bad as when Sasuke had talked about revenge, but it was close to it. If he didn't get to be a shinobi, then how could he ever become Hokage? How could he win the respect of the village? How could Hinata ever respect him? Naruto panicked and pointedly forgot everything he'd learned from the dreams and from the academy. "What do you mean give up?" he shouted. He fought against the ropes, but they were too strong. "Give me a break." "Okay, so maybe none of us got our hands on one of your stupid bells, but why the heck should we quit over that?" "Because not one of you has what it takes," answered Kakashi without missing a beat. What happened next took Naruto completely by surprise. Suddenly Sasuke was charging towards Kakashi. It all happened so fast that Naruto hadn't even registered him getting to his feet. He heard Sakura cry Sasuke just next to him, forgetting the kun altogether. Sasuke drew a kunai in mid-sprint and raised it for a stab. What happened next was done so fast that Naruto was unable to see what really happened, only that Sasuke was suddenly pinned to the ground with one arm held behind his back by Kakashi, who was sitting on Sasuke's back and resting a foot on the team's head. Naruto was speechless. A small part of him remembered what the white-haired man had said. Two things he had said actually, about fighting fast to conceal secrets, and about losing control of your temper. Kakashi had moved so fast, and defeated Sasuke so easily that Naruto could only look on in awe. And then there was Sasuke, whom was usually calm and acting as if everything about him was cool, brought down like Chuji without lunch. It didn't take him long to realize that he had not been thinking straight a few moments ago. All that prevented him from doing something stupid was the ropes that held him in place. He didn't think that he would have attacked the teacher like Sasuke did, but still he would have done something stupid. Kakashi just sat calmly on Sasuke, looking as bored as ever. "What you are is a trio of spoiled brats." He was cut off by Sakura, who shouted at him in outrage, "Don't step on Sasuke-kun. Get off him." Kakashi silenced her, and any addition Naruto cared to offer with another irritated glare. "Are you trying to make fun of shinobi with your behavior?" he demanded. "Well, are you?" Neither Naruto nor Sakura responded. "Did you even stop to wonder for 1 minute why you were divided into teams?" The question struck a tune for Naruto. Teams generally worked by working together. There had been several group assignments in the academy. Could it be? Excuse me?" Sakura asked in an uncertain voice. "Obviously not," Kakashi said, while putting pressure on Sasuke's arm, making him winch. "So you missed the entire point of the exercise." Naruto was still a little out of the moment, so when he thought out loud, "Teamwork?" he didn't really realize that he had said it out loud. Kakashi raised an eyebrow, and his mask moved as if he got a smug smile under it. "That's right." Sakura glanced over her shoulder at Naruto. Her eyes were asking a silent question. Sasuke actually managed to look surprised that Naruto seemed to know something at all, but that was more because it is hard to remain proud and all-knowing when you got someone's sandal on your head. "If the three of you had come at me together, you might have been able to take the bells," Kakashi explained. He had a more relaxed tone than before. Naruto felt proud of his lucky guess. None of the others seemed to notice his surprise. He wanted to keep it that way. Sakura, on the other hand, noticed something that Naruto had not. "If we were expected to function as a team, why do you only have 2 bells?" she asked, bewildered. "Even if we'd worked together, one of us still would have had to go without lunch." "You're preaching teamwork, but you played us against each other." Naruto got a bit nervous. It wouldn't be good if she asked him anything about that. Kakashi just gave her a bored look, as if she had missed something obvious. That was the idea. Naruto and Sakura stared at the masked Jonin. Seeing their reaction, Kakashi decided to elaborate. "The situation was set up to reveal which of you would set aside your individual interests and propose to the others that you should work together." He settled his gaze on Sakura before he continued. "Instead of which you, Sakura, ignored Naruto, who was trying his best, right in front of you, while you focus your attention on Sasuke, though you didn't know where he was." Sakura blushed in embarrassment, and was saddened by the accusation. Sasuke here, Kakashi dropped his gaze down towards Sasuke, had already decided that the two of you would just get in his way and he would be better off on his own. Sasuke scowled as Kakashi moved his foot a bit, forcing his face down in contact with the ground. Kakashi shifted his attention onto Naruto. And then there's Naruto, who tried to do single-handedly what should have been the work of all three. Naruto felt embarrassed by the comment, but reacted only with a pout. There was a moment of silence before Kakashi continued. "You are a team. Learn to act as one. Yes, it is necessary for a ninja to have individual skills, but what is even more important now is teamwork. Making a play as an individual is bad for the team and exposes you comrades to unnecessary danger." Kakashi reached behind his back into his equipment pouch while he talked. You might as well kill them yourself. Here's an example. The Jonin took out a kunai and held it to Sasuke's throat. Sakura. Kill Naruto. Or Sasuke dies. Sakura's eyes were wide open. She looked frantic, which made Naruto very nervous. She wouldn't, would she? That day could come, when one of you may be taken hostage, and you're forced to make such a choice, Kakashi explained as he got off Sasuke's back. When you are on a mission, your lives will always be on the line. Sasuke seated himself upright as Kakashi walked over to the stone. Look at this marker, all these names carved into the stone. Heroes of our village ninja. Naruto's ear caught the word hero. If the names on that stone belonged to heroes, then his name should be on it too. He wanted to shout out that his name was going on that stone, but then he decided against it. He had a good thing going, being the one that was right about the real meaning of the exercise. Even if it was mostly luck, why spoil it with an outburst? Kakashi was silent for a moment before he continued. It is a memorial. These are the names of people that have died in the line of duty. Naruto felt his determination to get his name on the stone just drain away, leaving a pit where his stomach should be. It includes the names of my best friends, Kakashi continued. He looked at the genin over his shoulder, his expression showing dead seriousness. If this had been real, you would not only have failed your mission, you would most likely be dead. Only one of you would have had a chance of having your name added to this stone. Kakashi's words didn't just tell them how serious he was, it also teased their curiosity. Naruto found himself hoping that it was him Kakashi was talking about. That way, he would at least have that much. The Jonin turned around and faced them. His expression didn't change. It would have been Naruto. Naruto didn't know exactly how to react. He started to smile, but the sudden tension in the air stopped him. He could literally feel the anger coming off Sakura and Sasuke. After he failed to get a bell, and he heard Sakura scream, Sakura blushed when Kakashi mentioned it. He went out of his way to help her. When the two of you found Sasuke, he was the one to dig him out. Naruto smiled at his teammates' irritation, which only helped to make it flare up again. He knew it was stupid to make them angry, but it wasn't often someone told him he was better than the team. Sakura carefully raised a hand. Kakashi nodded for her to start asking, Sensei, if Naruto is the only one that would have ended up with his name on the stone, why is he the only one tied to a pole? Yeah. Why? Naruto agreed. It was nice being the center of attention, but he was somewhat curious about that himself. Kakashi shook his head. I didn't say that he would have ended up on it, just that he was the only one that had a chance, he answered in a disappointed tone. Naruto frowned. Kakashi looked directly at Naruto. When he helped the two of you, he forgot all about the target. A ninja who chooses teammates over an important assignment isn't rewarded often, it's downright frowned upon. For some reason, Naruto got the feeling that Kakashi wasn't really disappointed. Not at him anyway. It just sounded so odd and out of place when the Jonin said it. In this scenario, Naruto has compromised the objective and is now being punished for it. Kakashi looked at the stone again before he continued. He had the chance and opportunity to rally the two of you, but he didn't. Naruto felt more confused than embarrassed from what Kakashi was saying. It was as if the Jonin was praising Naruto at the same time as he was criticizing him. That said, he did better than the rest of you. He was at least trying to do something instead of just running around like children, Kakashi added harshly. Sakura looked at the ground, refusing to meet Kakashi's gaze. Sasuke didn't react at all, not visibly. The silence stretched on, making the genin uncomfortable. Listen. I'll give you all one last chance. One that will be far more difficult than our last little game with bells, Kakashi said after a while. If you are prepared to continue, you may have one of the lunchboxes here, but no sharing with Naruto, he goes hungry. Naruto's stomach growled in protest along with him. Why? Because you abandoned the objective. Shinobi are not rewarded for such acts, Kakashi responded as he made to leave. After 2 steps he stopped and glared back at them. If either of you two feeds him, you failed the test right there. My word is law. Do you understand? Before anyone had time to respond, the Jonin disappeared in a swirl of leaves and dust. I don't need to eat anything. I ate breakfast, so I'm not hungry, proclaimed Naruto in an effort to keep the spirit up. His stomach, however, was disagreeing with him, somewhat more convincingly than his words. The other two didn't say anything, and from their expressions, Naruto didn't think they would say anything friendly if they did. Sasuke shuffled over and took one of the boxes without a word. Sakura followed his example, and both of them seated themselves by the poles next to Naruto. He could smell rice, which seemed to still be warm. It made his mouth water. Naruto could do nothing but listen to the eating. He thought the noises were a bit louder than necessary, but that might just have been because he was hungry. Luckily, it didn't take long for his stomach to start growling again, trying desperately to stop the sound of the other two eating. Hungry as he was, he couldn't help but notice that after a few minutes Sasuke had stopped eating. After another couple of agonizing minutes, Sasuke trusted his bento box in Naruto's direction. Here, eat, he ordered without even looking up. Sakura nearly choked on her food. But Sasuke-kun, Kakashi-sensei told us. Her protest was cut short by Sasuke, whom still had not raised his gaze from the ground. I'm not worried. He's probably miles away by now. And we'll all need our strength if we're going to work together to get those bells. He paused 2 seconds before he continued. You're no good to me if you're just going to be a liability. Naruto didn't know what to say. The team wanted him to eat, even if Kakashi had said otherwise. A moment later, Sakura trusted her lunch towards Naruto as well. She didn't say anything, didn't even look him in the face. A rush of emotion washed over Naruto. They were in fact risking their own chance to become real genin for him. It made him feel both embarrassed and touched. It felt somewhat like when he was eating ramen with Iruka-sensei. He was so moved by the act that all he managed to say was a weak, but emotional thank you, to show his appreciation. Out of nowhere, a large cloud of dust and smoke whirled up before the three. The furious masked face of Kakashi appeared right in front of them, shouting at the top of his voice. "You!" The face twisted into a smile. "Pass." The genin stayed silent, too shocked to even move. Kakashi stood over them, as happy as they'd ever seen him. Sakura was the first to say something. "We pass." "But why?" "Because you have now taken a great leap forward," Kakashi answered cheerfully, if not very helpfully. Sakura was the one to ask the next questions as well, but Naruto was just as curious. What do you mean? Up until now, all you've done is to listen unquestioningly to everything I've said," Kakashi explained, straightening up. "A true shinobi seeks for the hidden meaning within the hidden meanings. In a ninja's world, those who violate the rules and fail to follow orders are trash." Kakashi paused and looked up at the sky. "However, those who don't care for and support their comrades are even lower than trash." Naruto was stunned. Moved, confused, embarrassed, surprised, but most of all stunned. This teacher was actually very cool. Kakashi looked from Sasuke to Sakura. "I made sure that you were set against little Naruto-kun here." Kakashi was cut off by Naruto's instinctive exclamation. "Hey," but just continued as if it never happened. "But you still decided to give him food even after I specifically ordered you not to." None of the genin said anything. "This exercise is now concluded. You all pass." Kakashi gave them a thumbs up. "That's all for today, Team 7. Your duties will commence tomorrow." Naruto's cheering could be heard all the way back to Konoha. "So, how'd it go, Naruto-kun?" I am asked as he and Iruka arrived at the ramen stand. Iruka had met up with Naruto, not long after he managed to pry himself off the pole where Kakashi and the rest of the team had left him. It may have been a cruel thing to do, but Naruto had a sneaking feeling that it had something to do with escaping techniques, and in the end he had managed to free himself anyway. "It was great, I am Onizen," Naruto replied happily. "That Kaka-sensei is really cool. And his test was really easy," he lied proudly. "Oh? Was it now?" Tucci asked as he joined his daughter at the counter to take their order. Both Naruto and Iruka ordered regular flavored ramen, before continuing. "Yeah, it was. It was all about teamwork and stuff." Iruka smiled at how excited Naruto was for passing the test. In truth, he was really impressed. He'd eaten his lunch with the Hokage, who had told him about Kakashi's record for failing teams. Naruto's team was the first he had ever passed. Iruka was dragged back to the moment when he heard Naruto say, "Thank you Onizen and Ajizen. The oranges and all the ramen before bed really helped. You're the best." He looked at the ramen-making duo in search for clues about what the genin was talking about. Naruto noticed, "They gave me some really good advice, Iruka-sensei," he explained. Ayam folded her arms and nodded sagely. "People don't work without food. That goes without saying." Tucci, whom had started working on their order, nodded in agreement. "Telling people not to eat isn't what you would expect from a responsible adult. Not even shinobi is able to go without food." Iruka was getting confused and turned to Naruto. The boy scratched the back of his head in mild embarrassment. "Kaka-sensei told us not to eat breakfast before the test, but I got these oranges from Ayam." Naruto suddenly seemed to panic, and he continued in a rush, "They really helped me. They didn't break any rules, not really. It was more advice than an order." Iruka waved his hand in front of him and smiled to show that nothing was wrong. "It's alright, Naruto. From what you said on the way, I would think that it was a way to keep you from having an easy time anyway. Wasn't the whole idea behind the test to have you disobey orders?" Naruto calmed down and smiled. He was relieved that he didn't get Ayam and Tucci in trouble. "That was a great favor you did for Naruto," Iruka said thankfully to the chef and his daughter. "If I didn't know better, you could be the prime reason why Naruto here passed," he added in a more playful voice while he messed with Naruto's hair. Naruto didn't object, even if he was confident that he would have managed even without the food. He was after all an awesome ninja. Ayam leaned a bit over the counter and got an evil glint in her eye, as she placed a couple of bowls in front of the two customers. She waited until both Iruka and Naruto said their itadakimasu before she mentioned the little deals she had made on Naruto's behalf. "You know, Iruka-san, it was more of a trade than a favor sort of," she started. Iruka looked up at her with a cocked eyebrow and a mouth full of ramen. Tucci seemed to materialize by his daughter's side, eager to hear what she was trying to find out. Ayam smiled sweetly towards Naruto, who seemed oblivious to the danger he was in. "He still hasn't told us who the new lucky girl is." Naruto started coughing with his mouth full, as Iruka swallowed. He looked from Ayam to Naruto and back again.